When his own teammates betrayed him, throwing him to a 100-meter monster because he was the only ordinary guy in the squad, but instead of dying, he awakened a vampire system. That system forced him to drink blood from a new curvy woman every day. The first bite from each new woman made him stronger. The first was Sylvie, a gorgeous succubus. She offered her neck, so he bit down his strength. Reward was random, 1 attribute point from each new living woman. Miss one sunrise and the system took 5 points back. This happened in 2025, after dimensional rifts filled Earth with monsters and a few humans became evolved. He was Garrett Durham, an ordinary porter with a disease that could stop his heart without warning. He kept taking dangerous work because his younger sister depended on him. The system gave him one brutal question. Could he grow fast enough to hunt the captain who fed him to that monster before sunrise started taking power away, to understand why he was drinking from an entire village? Go back one night. Start with the mission where Kirk Redmond used him as bait. After the 2025 breach, monsters flooded Earth. Normal weapons failed and a few humans became evolved. Garrett never did. During an early beast attack, his mother dragged his little sister and him from a collapsing shelter. She took the blow meant for them. Live, his mother told him, protect your sister, he promised her. Then Rift Decay started destroying his body. It could stop his heart without warning. His sister still needed rent and school money, so he joined Kirk's squad as a porter and battlefield cleaner. The evolved carried weapons. He carried everything they did not want touching their expensive uniforms. That night's Tier 1 mission looked simple: clear a nest near Ridgeway City and leave. The squad killed the first beasts. Garrett hauled the packs and cleaned up. Then a pebble bounced beside his boot. The entire slope shook. Trees snapped beyond the nest. A massive head rose over the forest, followed by scales thick enough to turn military fire. A Tier 5 Titan python had found them. Every evolved froze. Kirk froze with them. Garrett was the dying porter. Yet he moved first. Drop the cores, he shouted. Run. Order broke their panic. Packs dropped. Everyone ran. He turned too. Kirk's blade opened his chest from behind. He fell to one knee. Kirk grabbed his collar while the Titan python pushed through the trees. You have Rift Decay, Kirk told him. You could die next week anyway. He glanced at the escaping squad. You're the only non-evolved member. One useless life buys the rest of us time. They all heard him. Nobody came back. Kirk threw him down the slope beneath the pythons' jaws and ran after them. That was the bargain bin captain's master plan. Feed the man who saved his squad from freezing, then call it leadership. The python opened its mouth. His mother's last words came back clearly. Live. Protect your sister. He dug his fingers into the mud and tried to crawl. His arms failed. The python struck. A red gold circle opened beneath him. Ancient symbols spun through the mud. Light sealed Kirk's wound across his chest and pulled him down before the fangs closed. One heartbeat later, he landed on black stone inside an underground chamber. The forest was gone. The python was gone. His wound was gone. A ring of horned adult women surrounded the circle. One stepped forward and knelt. She was stunning. For one stupid second, he forgot the python. He was almost python food, but now this gorgeous girl, Sylvie Moore, kneels, claiming she activated the ancient circle. She swears eternal loyalty, promising that all of Nightville Village stands with her. System panel pops up beside her. Sylvie Morn, a Tier 3 succubus, 88% affinity. Reaching 100% unlocks a unique reward. Suddenly, a cold voice echoes inside his head. The vampire ascension system activates. Compatible dying soul. Stabilized species evolved into blood fiend. This ancient magic circle searched for dying soul compatible with blood energy. It snatched him right from the python's jaws, and the system rebuilt his broken body. Chose him remained a mystery. He already had one useful answer. He could survive long enough to find Kirk. Sylvie stepped closer. If her lord desires comfort, her body and heart are his. Xylon tried to be respectful, raising one hand. He had to be a gentleman, but follower affinity dropped from 88 to 85%. He stared at the stat. He survived a Tier 5 python and immediately lost points for good manners. Absolutely elite decision-making. No, Xylon quickly told Sylvie that came out wrong. She was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. Rejecting her was just plain stupid. Extremely interested. Affinity restored to 88. Sylvie smiled again and touched her neck. A blood fiend needs fresh energy. She said, please drink from me. The system stated the rule before he moved. Blood assimilation available. first blood from each new living adult woman. Grants one random attribute point, one reward per target. He placed one hand behind Sylvie's shoulder and bit her neck. Warm blood touched his tongue. Power hit instantly, strength +1, blood assimilation. Unlocked, Sylvie gripped his sleeve but did not pull away when he released her. Her affinity climbed another point. More importantly, his right hand crushed a stone cup by accident. One bite had already changed what his body could do. He looked past Sylvie at the rest of Night Vale Village, every adult succubus in Night Vale Village looked back. Several were already adjusting their collars. We all know where this is going. Every woman here forms one line, he announced. I take one sample from each of you, one time only. The chamber explodes into arguments. 3 succubi rush the front, 2 claiming their family served the village longer. Another offers snacks if he lets her go twice, but the system only rewards the first bite. He tells them the snack offer stands and he respects the hustle. Sylvie folds her arms, warning him they're getting too close as he gestures at the crowd, reminding her she summoned him into a village of succubi. Sylvie lifts her chin. She was focused on saving their people. He nods at the line, and now Sylvie stares at the line, admitting she regrets making them organized. The first woman steps forward. He bites her, lets her go, and moves on. Agility rises by 1. The second offers her wrist instead of her neck. His spirit increases by 1. Third tries to lean against him after the bite, until Sylvie pulls her away by the shoulders. Stamina goes up. The notifications keep coming, boosting his strength. Agility, spirit, and endurance. Every new woman adds another piece, and those stats stack fast. After the 7th bite, a village elder suddenly kneels to begin a formal blessing, but 3 women behind her immediately complain that the ceremony is delaying their turns. He helps the elder stand, asking for the blessing later. The women cheer. Sylvie covers her face with one hand. A younger succubus points at the fading mark on Sylvie's neck, asking if receiving the first bite makes her the first wife. Sylvie answers before he can even breathe, stating she is just the summoner who saved their lord. The woman asks if that means yes, making Sylvie's affinity rise by 1 point as she glares at her. The system clearly has no respect for plausible deniability. He keeps moving. One woman poses like it is a contest, while another asks if courage earns bonus affinity. The system says no, but she still looks proud. The women treat each bite like a sacred ritual, while he treats this line like the most shameless training method ever approved by a supernatural interface. A nervous woman offers her trembling wrist with both hands shaking. He keeps the bite brief. Her tense shoulders loosen and the next 2 women step forward without being called. That reaction settles the line faster than any speech could. A taller succubus asks if followers need a separate oath. The system answers as the line advances. Follower registration requires an eternal loyalty oath and affinity measures. Attachment and trust, 100% grants a unique reward. The women nearby immediately start whispering about oaths, rank, and who should go first. Sylvie silences the argument with one look. Useful, dangerous, incredibly efficient. By the final bite, his senses sharpen enough to hear faint whispers. Outside the chamber, his muscles feel packed with power, and the heavy stone doors no longer look heavy. 10 minutes ago, Kirk's squad called him dead. Wait, now an entire supernatural village calls him their Fiend Lord, competing over who gets to help him grow. That confidence boost is medically irresponsible. Sylvie stands taller with every notification, peeling away any woman who holds his sleeve too long. The last succubus steps away and the system closes the harvest. Back on Earth, his younger sister, Autumn Durham, still needs him alive. Every stat point brings him closer to keeping his promise to their mother. All current Night Vale targets have now been fully assimilated. Repeating targets only gave blood energy without any extra attribute rewards, so the village could feed him again, but none of them would trigger another stat. He tested his upgraded body in the courtyard, where a stone training pillar stood. Near the wall, Sylvie warned him it had survived several generations of demon attacks. Garrett punched it once, cracking the center as the watching succubi cheered. One immediately asked if he needed another sample to celebrate, but Sylvie stepped in. Sylvie firmly told her no, making the woman glance at Garrett. She asked if their lord said no. Sylvie smiled politely, saying their lord enjoyed having a village left to rule. Talk about follower politics speedrunning. A civil dispute. The succubi prepared a room for him before midnight. The bed was soft, the door locked, and Sylvie made her intentions perfectly clear. She later admitted she visited his room wearing her most dangerous smile. Instead, she found an empty bed. Garrett had already slipped out through a side passage toward a graveyard that held dense death energy. He hunted a steady supply of low-tier monsters, hoping Kirk was still alive. Besides, temporary stat boosts won't be enough for his revenge. At the graveyard, after midnight, blank-faced wraiths rise from between the broken headstones. The first rushes him with hands outstretched. He catches its wrist, a move that feels better than any system panel. Before this, lifting a heavy crate would trigger severe chest pain. Now he twists, slamming the wraith into a marker and crushes the dark core in its chest. Experience floods in. Two more emerge from the fog. One strikes high, the other sweeps low. He kicks the low one into an open grave, ducks the second, and drives his elbow right through its core. The buried wraith claws its way up, so he drops a stone marker on its head, crude, effective, and perfectly fitting for his first night as a vampire. More wraiths flock to the noise. He lures them between the graves, using the narrow paths to prevent them from surrounding him, and slays them one at a time. His level reaches 8. Blood Step is now unlocked. 2 short distance dashes per recovery cycle. He tests one charge. The world jerks and he appears 12 feet away before the fog closes behind him, fast enough to cross a killing distance, but limited enough that wasting one will hurt. A bone cleaver buries itself right where his head just was. 2 tier 2 grave butchers step out from behind a mausoleum. They are twice the size of those wraiths, wrapped in burial cloth and carrying hooked weapons of solid bone. 1 blood step charge remains. Both monsters charge. The first butcher swings low. He jumps the hook, but the second catches his shoulder with the flat of its cleaver and hurls him through a headstone. His new body survives, though his shoulder still screams. Good. The system gave him power, but pain still collects its fee. The butchers separate to trap him between them. He lets the closer one believe he is cornered. As the hook comes down, he triggers his last blood step and peers past its elbow. He rips a spare bone knife from its belt and drives the blade deep into the joint behind its knee. The butcher collapses. Its partner rushes to finish him. He drags the fallen monster right into its path. The cleaver sinks into its partner's back and gets stuck. That is the opening he needs. He climbs the trapped weapon, kicks the second butcher hard across the jaw, and buries the stolen knife in its core. The first beast tries to rise, but he tears free the cleaver and finishes it off with its own partner's weapon. Both bodies hit the dirt. The graveyard falls completely silent. He reaches level 11, unlocking Crimson Grave and Blood Veil, earning the Grave Breaker title. The level ups also leave several free attribute points. He pours most of them into speed and stamina. Kirk beat him once because his body failed before he could react. He has no intention of giving him that same opening twice. Testing Blood Veil first, his aura dims and the nearby wraiths stop tracking him. Even his footsteps soften against the gravel. Then he releases the veil and raises one hand. Crimson Grave answers with 3 blood-red spikes bursting from the soil around a cracked headstone. The skill is fast, direct, and ugly. Perfect. He has gained a dash, a hiding skill, a battlefield restraint, and a title in a single graveyard run. The former Hack Mule is building a serious toolkit. He barely finishes enjoying that thought before the next notice replaces everything. Daily blood quest activated. Before sunrise, he must drink fresh blood from at least 1 new living adult woman. Failure meant losing 5 attribute points. The clouds east of the graveyard were already turning gray. He had already tested every valid woman in the village. A female wraith crawled from a nearby grave. For half a second, he wondered if the system had thrown him an ugly workaround. Its label flashed. Invalid target due to corrupted blood. Dead spirits did not qualify. The wraith lunged anyway. He unleashed Crimson Grave for the first time, pinning it with 2 red spikes before crushing its core. No quest completion popped up. He checked the village through the trees. Every living woman there had already triggered his blood assimilation. Repeat blood could sustain him, but the daily quest demanded someone entirely new. He had turned a whole succubus village into a stat harvest and caused a supply crisis in a single night. A new personal record. Then headlights sliced right through the graveyard fog. A black car turned onto the cemetery road. 2 shadows sat in front, while someone else waited in back. He had minutes before sunrise, no targets left, and unknown hunters driving straight toward him. The black car rolled in just as dawn paled the eastern sky. He stood between 2 dead grave butchers with his quest still Open, whoever stepped out next would either save his 5 attribute points or become a brand new problem. The front doors opened. 2 men in combat uniforms stepped out. Both were very male, and his system offered zero sympathy. Tragic. They spread out immediately, aiming detection devices toward the graves. Their uniforms bore the crest of Scarlet Bastion, a major faction in Ridgeway City. Then the back door opened. A woman stepped out with frost gathering beneath her boots. She was Twyla Hargrove, a gold lower ice evolved leading this team. She was gorgeous, furious by default, and easily strong enough to be lethal. Just then, the system illuminated target labels over all 3 hunters. The 2 men were yellow, meaning manageable, but Twyla's label flashed. Red, indicating she was stronger than him. The system color code was simple. Green meant harmless, yellow was a potential fight, and red meant avoid getting clever. Naturally, he used blood step. Twyla had her hand on the door when he vanished from the graveyard and reappeared right behind her. He grabbed her shoulders, pulled her back against his chest, and bit her neck before anyone could react. Intense cold exploded through his mouth, accompanied by a flood of system notifications. Daily blood quest complete, blood assimilation triggered, 1 random attribute boosted. Twyla's follower affinity hit 30%. He released her immediately. Twyla answered by blasting him through a heavy headstone, cold ice sealed. Around the broken stone before he even hit the dirt, she spun, covering her neck with one hand, pointing the other at his chest. He had 3 seconds, she snapped. To explain why she shouldn't freeze him solid, Garrett slowly pushed himself upright. He told her to start with his name, Garrett Durham, and remember her mission. She covered her neck, saying that plan was only valid before he bit her, yet her affinity still ticked up by 1 point. The system was basically mocking her denial. Garrett stood slowly, pointing out her numbers disagreed with her threat. Twyla's eyes narrowed, asking what numbers. He called it private information. Frost spread around her boots as 6 ice spears formed behind her, aimed at his chest. She easily could have fired. Instead of piercing him, the sharp ice spearheads expand into heavy restraints. Her mouth promises murder as her power builds a cage. He raises his hands. She still wants him alive. Twyla snaps her fingers. A heavy restraint slams around his ankle, freezing him to the ground. Being alive and comfortable are completely different things. Her tone is freezing. That tiny affinity increase afterward is pure comedy. But the quest is complete, but the woman who helped now wants his head clean. Solutions are apparently illegal in his life. Suddenly, a Scarlet Bastion subordinate raises his weapon, telling team leader Hargrove that the target matches the rare blood signal and should restrain him before the sun rises. The second subordinate takes a step toward him. Suddenly, another engine roars down the cemetery road as a larger vehicle stops behind Twyla's car, blocking the exit. A red detector on its hood pulses toward him. These newcomers had followed the exact same rare blood signal. 2 men step out wearing expensive combat coats, led by Callum Donovan, the arrogant younger heir of Apex Dominion. His family treats Ridgeway City's monsters, people, and property like simple additions to a private collection. The second man carries a deck of razor-sharp metal cards, staying half a step behind him. Callum stares at Garrett's exposed fangs, then at the fresh bite mark on Twyla's neck as his smile widens. A rare vampire and an ice captain in the same graveyard. Callum laughs. Scarlet Bastion can keep the woman, but Apex Dominion will take the creature. Twyla lowers her hand from her neck while Garrett insists she found him first, but Callum laughs that she only found property, not ownership. Right on cue, the greedy trophy collector has entered the chat. His label glows orange above his head, overwhelming. Meanwhile, the card user shows red. Twyla can kill the partner, but Callum can destroy them all. So Garrett gives Twyla a reason to make his problem hers. He steps behind her ice line and speaks loudly enough for Callum to hear everything. Only someone as beautiful and noble as team leader Hargrove deserves to claim him. Twyla glances over her shoulder. Her affinity suddenly jumps. Callum's smile flattens. Twyla lifts her chin, telling Callum that Garrett is under Scarlet Bastion custody. Garrett notes that sounded warmer than custody, prompting Twyla to form an ice blade right beside his throat, ordering silence. She actually used his name instead of creature. Garrett counts that as progress. Callum steps forward, mentioning his powerful father collects rare bloodline beasts, demanding they hand him over to avoid trouble. Twyla answers him with a raging ice storm. The card-drawing partner snaps his wrists, sending sharp metal cards spinning to slice the nearest Gravestones into slabs, Twyla steps right through the flying debris without slowing. Frost crawls over every single card in midair. The panicked partner jerks his hands back, trying to recall them, but it's too late. Twyla closes her fist. A giant ice rose erupts. Beneath his feet, its sharp petals fold shut, sealing the card user inside a clear. Frozen prison, his terrified final expression remains clearly visible through the ice. He looks deeply offended that the woman he tried to rob actually fought back. That's one enemy down. Callum doesn't even look worried. Instantly, Twyla launches 3 massive ice lances. At his chest, Callum effortlessly slaps the first aside, catches the second, and uses it to smash the third. He strolls through the freezing storm as if this entire cemetery belongs to his family too. Twyla forms a sharp blade and slashes for his throat. Callum shattered it with his bare hand, grabbed her wrist, and drove his shoulder into her chest. Twyla flew across the cemetery and slammed into the side of her car hard enough to bend the door. The frost around his ankle broke from the impact. Callum brushed ice from his sleeve, muttering about her gold lower rank. He had let her strongest attacks land, just to prove they did not matter. Arrogant, yes, but dangerous. He could back it up. Twyla forced herself upright, blood touching the corner of her mouth. Callum was stronger and she was bleeding. His blood step charges were dangerously low as the sun almost cleared the horizon. Then a sharp pulse tightened behind his ribs. The follower bond. Sylvie could sense his location whenever danger spiked, and she had followed him from Nightville Village. A violet flash crossed the road. His first follower landed between the cars, spotting the Scarlet Bastion's armed guards and reacting before asking questions. Sylvie's eyes glowed. Both guards turned to stone before they could even aim. One froze with his mouth wide open. The other still held a restraint cable, as if planning to arrest the situation with sheer optimism. Twyla saw her team petrified and raised an ice blade again. Sylvie ignored the weapon, the damaged car, and the stronger enemy. She ran straight past Twyla and jumped into his arms, crying out that he had disappeared, fought the undead completely alone, and found another woman before she could reach him. He adjusted his grip, sighing that her summary felt a bit judgmental. Sylvie saw the bite mark on Twyla's neck and grew even more suspicious. Twyla pushed away from the car, demanding she get off him. Sylvie tightened her hold, snapping that Twyla was trying to cage him. Twyla raised her ice blade, claiming she was just securing him. Now 2 women were arguing over him, while Callum prepared to kidnap all 3 of them. Talk about a system that is literally designed to cause absolute chaos. Callum suddenly appeared beside Twyla, backhanding her straight into the dirt road. He told them they could fight over the vampire after his father finished studying him. Pointing at Sylvie, he declared the succubus would make a fine bonus trophy. Sylvie's grip tightened as Callum reached out, but he activated his blood step. The dash carried them away from Callum's grasp and deep into the nearby grove. His last charge vanished, and Callum's menacing orange label quickly followed through the trees. He needed Sylvie's affinity at 100, but the panel was just short of it. No time for subtle romance. He pinned her against a tree and kissed her. Sylvie froze for a split second, then grabbed his collar and kissed him back. Affinity rose to 99% as Callum strolled in slow, clapping and mocking that the pet was performing tricks before the collection. He stepped in front of Sylvie. A wall of ice suddenly blocked Callum. Twyla stood at the edge of the grove, clutching her ribs. She had followed, despite the hit, telling Callum that the vampire was her target alone. Callum struck the ice wall, sending cracks racing across the surface. He looked back at Sylvie, telling her to stay close and stay safe. Her panel flashed. Follower affinity hit 100%. The ground shook. Crimson energy burst from his body and tore through the trees. The remaining frost vaporized instantly. His heartbeat slowed as his senses sharpened beyond anything he had ever felt in Nightville. In the village, Callum's orange label flickers before turning completely green. His hand freezes halfway through the broken ice. That confidence is short-lived. With a single transformation, the system reveals what Sylvie has unlocked. Unique follower reward received. Blood Sovereign form lasting 10 minutes. A single charge granting temporary access to advanced Blood Fiend abilities. Callum takes a step back, demanding to know what he is facing. But he attacks anyway, proving some people just lack basic survival instincts. People hiding behind their fathers rarely develop any real survival instincts. Callum drives a gold tier strike toward his chest, but he easily catches his wrist. The impact splits the ground beneath his feet, but his arm remains completely still. Callum stares in shock, twisting to kick his knee and throwing a free elbow. He lets every single attack land, absolutely nothing changes, then he squeezes. As Callum's knees hit the dirt, he tries to stand, only to get slapped away. He flies across the grove, tearing through 2 trees and rolling into the cemetery. He stops right beside the frozen ally he had previously treated as completely disposable. Twyla watches him crawl while Sylvie looks on. Callum's entire social status is dead. Behind them, the ice suddenly shatters as his card-throwing partner bursts free. The partner immediately hurls every metal card. He calmly raises one hand. A devastating storm of crimson bats pours from his shadow, swallowing the cards. They cross the grove and strike the partner before he can even finish boasting. When the swarm lifts, only a standing skeleton remains, collapsing bone by bone. The blood bat storm is permanently acquired. Twyla slowly lowers her hand. Twyla stares at the skeleton in shock, while Sylvie's affinity remains locked at 100. Callum looks from the bones to him, finally remembering what true fear feels like. He gasps that his father runs Apex Dominion, and his family will erase them. He tells him to call his dad, lifting Callum easily by his throat. He calmly tells Callum that is good, so his father knows where to find him. Carrying him back through the cemetery, he aims toward the distant city skyline. With a massive throw, Callum is launched across the road, trees and miles. The system officially confirms the kill before the echo even reaches them. A later report shows Callum literally punched right through Apex Dominion's front wall. He died inside the most expensive room his wealthy family actually owned. Talk about home delivery with no signature required. The sovereign timer keeps ticking. Suddenly, red light gathers over Sylvie's heart, and a dark seal spreads. It glows brightly on her dress, forcing Twyla to stare as Sylvie looks down. Sylvie whispers that something is coming through as a sword hilt pushes out. The blade passes right through the light without harming her skin or dress. Twyla takes a step closer, completely baffled by what she is seeing. It seems the system opened its cursed equipment department a bit early. He wraps his hand around the hilt, and Sylvie nods for him to take it. With a firm pull, a massive black-red greatsword slides completely free. Sylvie staggers against him, while Twyla stares in absolute awe at the weapon. She looks from Sylvie to him. Meanwhile, Sylvie touches her glowing chest. The faint glow fades beneath her fingers, leaving her skin entirely untouched. Twyla circles her, checking the empty air but finding absolutely no sheath. Without a sane explanation, Sylvie looked proud while Twyla looked offended by physics. The greatsword hummed with Sylvie's power in Garrett's hands. Suddenly, Twyla demanded to know what he just pulled out of her. Sylvie's affinity stayed locked at 100, while Twyla's expression kept getting worse. A temporary Soul Forge preview activated the exclusive Nightblood greatsword. Max Affinity let followers create equipment. His blood sovereign form allowed him to preview that future ability, but the sword would vanish once the form ended. He tested the edge against Twyla's icy prison, one short slash easily cut through the frozen barrier, tearing the outer layer of her combat uniform. Twyla stared at her ruined clothing, then glared directly at Garrett. She growled his name like a threat, raising the sword. His only defense was that the weapon was brand new. Twyla pointed at her ruined uniform. Calling that a terrible defense, her subordinates remained petrified. Garrett carried Twyla deep into the woods before Sylvie released them, ensuring her men wouldn't see their commander looking exposed, and furious, Twyla fought his grip until he finally set her down behind a wall of trees. He placed the fading greatsword between them, reminding her that she had tried to capture him. She knew his face, his species, and Sylvie's origin, meaning Callum's family would tear through both of their factions, searching for answers. Twyla crossed her arms, dryly asking if he was kidnapping her. First, Garrett offered a simple solution. She had to swear an oath. Swearing eternal loyalty would register her as his follower, preventing her from betraying him to the Apex Dominion. Her jaw tightened in sheer disbelief. She asked if he expected agreement after biting her and ruining her clothes. He shook his head, pointing out that Callum had already proven what happens to those standing alone. Twyla glanced toward her. Petrified men waited. Finally, she repeated the oath through clenched teeth. The system registered Twyla Hargrove, though her affinity settled far below Sylvie's. She glared as if she wanted to punch the entire system through. His face, Garrett's sovereign form ended, and the greatsword slowly dissolved. Weakness hit his legs as cold sweat poured down his back. He slipped off his coat and Draped it over Twila's shoulders before her men could be set free. She clutched the collar tight. Follower affinity sat at 60%. Twila caught him watching. A phantom screen, warning him not to mistake this gesture for forgiveness. He smoothed the coat, saying he would never insult 60% like that. Her gaze instantly sharpened, asking 60 what? He backed away, calling it private. Meanwhile, the system pinged as Sylvie squabbled with Twila over who had the right to stand closer. A permanent path unlocked inside the Crimson Prison Arena, warned that injuries would persist and victories granted 0 experience. The exit stayed locked until a floor was cleared. His 10-minute miracle was over. Callum's death had put Apex Dominion on his trail, and temporary power would not survive the family. Response: the arena promised permanent strength, but offered absolutely no safe way back out. Before dawn broke, Sylvie guided him back to Nightville Village. His blood sovereign charge was spent. Callum Donovan was dead. Now his family would. He finally looked up. The Crimson Prison Arena prompt still floated in his vision. The rules were brutal and simple. Arena victories gave him 0 normal experience. Every injury would follow him home. Once inside, the exit remained completely locked. Only clearing the floor would unlock it, but permanent power waited inside, so he entered. The quiet village bedroom dissolved. He materialized inside a circular, red preparation room. Weapon icons lined one wall. Temporary buffs covered the other under a scarlet sky. Most options looked respectable. Standard weapons were right there. He saw a long-reach spear, a sharper sword, and a massive war hammer. But then his eyes landed on a cucumber, a literal paralysis cucumber. No extra damage, but hitting the target could silence and paralyze them. The system's cursed item shop was officially open. He locked it in. For his lone buff, he picked Armor Breaker. If the vegetable failed, he wanted defenses shattered. The preparation room walls finally slid open, revealing a roaring, packed arena. Hovering high above the ring, a horned announcer hyped up the bloodthirsty crowd. Hadley Thornton was the floor host, eager to watch challengers make terrible decisions. She looked down at the green cucumber clutched tightly in Garrett's hand. Announcing to the crowd, she noted that the challenger rejected 6 deadly weapons. Instead, he selected green produce. The crowd roared with laughter at the sight. Garrett shouted back that he preferred tactical produce. Hadley stared in pure disbelief. The opposite gate rose. Myrla Crawford stepped out into the dark arena. A thick wave of black mist followed her. She was a lethal adult banshee. She was also stunningly beautiful, highly inconvenient since she was here to kill him. Her dark dress hovered through the dark fog without ever touching the stone. Her cold eyes locked onto the vegetable. Myrla's mouth twisted in disgust. Did he really enter her death arena holding that? Garrett raised the cucumber. Highly recommended by absolutely nobody. Hadley dropped her hand, starting the fight. Myrla shrieked. The piercing sound bypassed his ears, striking directly inside his skull. Instantly, the arena vanished. Garrett stood inside the ruined shelter from his childhood. Dust covered the floor. His little sister wept somewhere behind him. His mother sat slumped against a shattered wall, dark blood soaking her dress. She reached out, whispering to Garrett that he was tired and should stay. Pointless. For a second, every battle fought since then felt totally useless. All the monsters, the system, the constant struggle, it started to fade. Only his mother's voice remained, the one sound he had desperately ached to hear. Then he remembered her real final words. Live, protect your little sister. She died to push him forward. Any monster using her face had chosen wrong. Garrett gripped the fake wrist. Instantly, the illusion cracked like cheap glass. Mother's ghost shattered. The roaring arena slammed right back into view. Myrla was already right on him, razor-sharp nails slashing toward his throat. Dodging aside, he still felt her fingers tear 4 bloody gashes across his coat. The cold wound burned. These injuries followed him home, so every scratch mattered. Shadowy mist took her form as she vanished, reappearing directly behind his back. Blood Step activated just in time, but she whipped around with a quick dash. Her jaw unhinged to release another devastating shriek. He didn't wait. Lunging forward, he caught her arm and drove the blunt vegetable right into her face. With that paralysis cucumber stuffed between her teeth, Hadley stopped speaking. The entire arena froze. Armor Breaker flashed right through his weapon. Morla's magical defense buckled, her jaw locked, her limbs stiffened, and she slammed down with a furious, muffled grunt. The system's dumbest weapon had silenced a banshee. Beautiful. Morla tried to rise, but he planted one. boot beside her shoulder, and aimed crimson grave at the floor around her. Blood-red spikes surrounded her body without piercing it. Surrender, he told. Her or the next scream gets another serving. Morla looked at the cucumber. Then at him she slapped the floor twice. Hadley finally recovered. Floor 1. Champion Morla Crawford has surrendered, she announced to a vegetable. The crowd lost its mind. Floor 1. Cleared, he acquired abnormal status resistance, and Crimson Grave strengthened. Victor's bond unlocked. Defeated arena champions may be summoned as followers. Morla's body dissolved into red light and entered the new bond. The arena had just turned its champion into a fighter he could call outside. The portal opened. Beneath him, 1 moment later, he landed back in his bedroom in Nightville Village. With every bruise intact, Sylvie sat on the bed holding a new black coat. She had made it to replace the coat he gave Twyla. My lord, Sylvie said, I noticed. Your wardrobe had been donated to another woman. He looked at the coat. You made a whole coat just to complain about Twyla. Sylvie held the coat against his shoulders. It fit perfectly. He ran his hand over the stitching. This is incredible. He could wear something she made for the rest of his life. Sylvie went very still. Her affinity jumped. Later, she admitted she heard that sentence as a marriage proposal. He had meant the coat was durable. Same words. Extremely different levels of commitment. An alarm horn sounded. Outside, the bedroom door burst open, and an adult succubus shouted that orcs had entered the village square. So much for domestic peace. In Nightville Village's central square, dozens of orc raiders had bound villagers, overturned food stores and piled stolen treasure beside the well. A Tier 3 orc centurion stood over the captives with a broad axe. He saw him wearing Sylvie's new coat and laughed. The summoned male came home. The centurion barked, kneel and I may sell you with the women. Wrong village, wrong coat, terrible timing. He stepped into the square. Morla. Red light opened beside him. The banshee from the arena appeared in full form. Took one look at the orcs and smiled without warmth. The centurion's laughter stopped. Victor's bond had paid outside the arena exactly when he needed it. Morla released a controlled death wail. The front line of orcs dropped their weapons and clutched their heads. Sylvie crossed the square through the opening, turned 2 raiders to stone, and tore the ropes from the nearest captives. 1 raider raised a blade over an elderly villager. He pulled the orc backward with Crimson Grave before the strike fell. The villager grabbed the dropped knife and cut the next prisoner free. The freed villager cut the next rope. Another captive grabbed a dropped knife. Within seconds, people who had been waiting to die were pulling each other free, while Morla kept the raiders disoriented. He used blood step to reach the centurion. His axe came down hard enough to split the wall behind him. He dashed inside the swing, drove his shoulder into the centurion's chest, wrapping Crimson Grave around both legs. The centurion pulled against the restraints and laughed again. The centurion bared his tusks. You're still only 1 male. Myrla's second wail hit his soldiers, while Sylvie's magic swept another row completely off their feet. He looked round the square. Count again. The centurion ripped 1 leg free and swung the axe sideways. He ducked, caught the handle, and used his own momentum to turn him toward the captives he had threatened. They watched him break the axe across his knee. Then Crimson Grave drove through the centurion's armor and crushed the core beneath it. Their leader fell. The remaining raiders tried to run. Sylvie petrified the ones near the gate. Myrla's wail dropped the rest before they reached the road. Within minutes, every captive was free, and every raider was dead or stone. The village's collective affinity surged. The villagers had first treated him like a summoned lord. Now they watched him protect their food, homes, and people before taking a single reward. 1 elder bowed. The others followed. He made them stand and start repairing the square. Bowing could wait. The shelves were still broken. The daily quest still needed a new living woman. Once the village was secure, he took Myrla into the woods beyond the wall. She was a living magical beast. The dead graveyard rats had corrupted blood. Myrla qualified when he explained the rule. She tilted her head. So your continued strength requires the blood of a new woman every dawn? Myrla asked. He nodded. Myrla pointed at the weapon. And you defeated me with a cucumber before asking. He spread his hands. He was busy surviving. Myrla exposed her neck with theatrical dignity. Then try not to be as inventive. This time he drank only enough to trigger the quest. Daily blood quest. Complete blood assimilation triggered. Myrla gripped the nearest tree and shuddered harder than Sylvie had. He released her at once. She took several breaths before looking at him. The paralysis weapon changed how my nerves respond. Everything's been painfully sensitive since the arena, he glanced at. The weapon, the cucumber, has consequences. Myrla glared, never call it that while standing near me. Myrla warned him never to use that weapon. Her blood also proved arena champions could satisfy the daily rule. Because they were living creatures, not dead spirits. That evening inside his room, Sylvie tried a plan of her own. She later confessed that the village seduction coach had given her a lust crest. The crest was supposed to weaken his resistance and make her private visit. Impossible to misunderstand, Sylvie activated it inside his room. The arena resistance flashed around him. The magic bounced back into her. Sylvie grabbed the bedpost, cheeks burning, and immediately cursed the coach by role, family line, and probable intelligence. He broke the crest before it could control the scene. Then he waited until Sylvie's breathing steadied and her eyes cleared. Do you still want me here? He asked. Sylvie grabbed his collar. My answer didn't come from the crest. The bedroom door closed. By morning, Sylvie's new aura had already changed. The Blood Fiend essence transfers, boosting Garrett's attributes. His stats increase while Sylvie advances to Tier 4, her new aura shaking down dust. Looking from her hands to him, she admits she feels much stronger now. He flexes his hands, admitting he feels absolutely fantastic. But the next daily quest appears before breakfast, completely ruining their victory lap. The village has no adult women left, as Myrla and Sylvie are already registered. Sylvie solves this quickly. She points north. She points out that the orc tribe who sent those raiders has adult women. They also have the warriors who have plagued Nightville village for years. This is a perfect way to solve two major problems right before breakfast. Garrett and Sylvie head to the orc settlement, and she spreads her wings at the gates. She wants to test her Tier 4 power against the tribe that exploited her village. The orcs charge in formation, led by a commander shouting insults. He yells that the succubus village sent a single woman to beg, but Sylvie just smiles. Raising one hand, she unleashes violet fire that rolls right through their front ranks. The blast shatters the gate towers and tears open the main street, collapsing nearby buildings. Warriors rush out from every side, with a second group trying to flank her from behind. Snapping her wings, she vanishes overhead, dropping a massive wave of magic. Stone bodies block the street instantly. Trapped fighters panic, while the commander desperately tries to rally his remaining troops. She burns his tower and catches him midair now. She reminds him that Nightville remembers every raid. With a cold glare, she drops him straight down into his own charging line. She doesn't slow down, and the system starts feeding Garrett experience for every kill. Her easy victories level him up very fast. Notification alerts stream in, counting 20, 50, then 100 kills. Soon she has killed 178 hostile orcs, capturing 30 alive. She locks up 30 female orcs, keeping them safe. Garrett orders her to keep them unharmed, as his daily quest requires living targets. He samples just one to complete his dawn quest easily. They are petrified as a reserve. He has basically become a vampire inventory manager. Survival has terrible branding, but the tribe's treasure holds a prize. They find a rare aura veil pearl. This pearl can suppress Garrett's demonic aura as long as he is not fighting. It finally gives him the perfect way to sneak into Ridgeway City without setting off detectors. Without setting off alarms, the shared experience also unlocks a new passive skill. Night Predator boosts his speed and bleeding attacks after dark, which fits perfectly. Knowing Kirk prefers night missions, Garrett heads back immediately. He gives Sylvie and Myrla direct orders to clear the nearby territory. They must protect the village and capture any female beasts for his quest. Though Sylvie begs to join him, Garrett flatly refuses. The village was already targeted once, and Myrla firmly backs his decision, even if she calls his solo plan foolish. Garrett secures the aura veil pearl beneath her coat, making sure everything is ready. With the blood veil hiding his traces, he finally sets off toward Ridgeway City. Permanent skills: a summonable banshee, a stronger first follower, and a concealed aura. One name waited at the end of the trip: Kirk Redmond. He thought returning to Ridgeway City would be the dangerous part. Then he learned the men who watched Kirk feed him to a monster still believed he made the right call. He reached Ridgeway City before noon, using the aura veil pearl to hide his blood fiend aura. The follower bond led him straight to Twyla Hargrove, his second follower in Scarlet, Bastion's ice team leader. It also let him enter her apartment without using the Front door, Twyla was asleep on the couch, his old coat wrapped around her like a blanket. He stood there for 3 full seconds, enjoying the evidence. Then Twyla opened one eye, calling out Garrett as a warning. He leaned against the wall, asking if she slept with every prisoner's coat or if he got special treatment. An ice pillow launched at his face, but he caught it before it broke his nose. Twyla sat up, pulling his coat tighter around her in the cold apartment. Her affinity rose 1 point. Beautiful. System stats told the truth even when Twyla absolutely refused to. Garrett told her he needed Kirk Redmond's next mission, demanding the time, location, squad size, and abilities. The teasing left her face. Twyla knew Kirk was the captain who fed him to the Titan Python. She also knew he returned to Ridgeway for him, promising to get his schedule, but she warned that Apex Dominion was already asking questions about Callum, a family issue for them, but it would soon become their own problem. When his older brother asks them, Twyla dressed for work, still wearing his coat over her uniform. Before leaving, she pointed at the door, telling him to stay hidden, not bite anyone or break anything. Garrett looked around her spotless apartment, commenting that she really knew how to make a guest feel trusted. Twyla opened the door, reminding him he entered through her bedroom wall. Fair point. That afternoon at Scarlet Bastion headquarters, the Donovan family reached her first. Twyla explained the encounter when she returned, while building records he read later filled in what happened after she left. Dashiell Donovan was Callum's older brother, a legendary Apex Dominion heir, and a man with a seriously unhealthy obsession with symmetry. He sat across from Twyla with both cuffs aligned and both gloves folded beside him. 2 identical water glasses stood the same distance from his chair. One loose strand of Twyla's hair hung lower on the left. Dashiell stared at it long enough to look physically ill. That was the first clue. The man was broken in a very specific direction. Dashiell told her Callum died inside their headquarters, and she was the last faction leader seen near him. Twyla kept her voice flat, stating her team was frozen, and when they recovered, Callum was gone. The fire enforcer standing behind Dashiell called her a liar, driving a flaming fist toward her face. Twyla caught the strike inside an ice shell. Dashiell raised one finger. The fire enforcer stopped. Dashiell offered a polite apology, explaining his subordinate simply disliked incomplete stories, but Twyla just crushed the ice around the man's wrist until he dropped to one knee, declaring she disliked bad manners. Dashiell smiled, but his eyes stayed locked on that uneven strand of hair. Then he demanded the names and locations of Twyla's 2 subordinates. She gave him nothing useful and left. The security transcript later showed Dashiell waited until the elevator closed before turning to his fire enforcer. He ordered both men taken alive to compare their stories. Meanwhile, Callum collected trophies. His brother wanted matching answers. Same family, different brand of terrible. Twyla returned after dark, carrying 2 cases and a thick folder heavy enough to be furniture. She dropped the entire massive stack on the table. Led an 8-person steel squad, set to enter the West Beast Zone at 10. Tonight, the file held their route, abilities, emergency signals, and enough personal data to buy houses in their names. He lifted a page, asking if she brought a mission file or a neighborhood registry. Twyla folded her arms, saying he wanted details, so she even included dental insurance. You are welcome, she said. One case held healing potions, the other contained a reinforced combat jacket, blades, and specialized gauntlets for evolved hands. Twyla tightened his jacket strap, handing him the blade's hilt first, before snapping a gauntlet around his wrist and pointing at a steel practice plate. He hid it. Once folding the metal around his fist, her downstairs neighbor immediately struck the ceiling with a broom. Twyla called it a controlled test, so he lowered his voice, joking that her plate lacked discipline. Her mouth twitched. She had spent her own money and risked her job to equip him. He had no business feeling so moved just 5 minutes before a deadly mission. Did she do this for 60%, he asked. Her eyes narrowed. 60 what, she demanded, but he pulled her close and kissed her before she could ask. She froze, but then Twyla grabbed his collar and kissed him back passionately, answering several questions she would later deny hearing. Her follower affinity reached 83%, releasing her. Frost coated the table legs. Twyla touched her mouth, noting that did not erase the bedroom wall issue, though it definitely improved the meeting. She shoved the healing potions against his chest, telling him to bring them back empty. Do not waste them, but get this, that advice aged terribly almost Immediately before starting his revenge, he visited Ridgeway Central High, where Autumn was still in class. Keeping a careful distance across the street, he stayed beneath Bloodville, pressing the Aura Veil Pearl tight against his chest. Through a second-floor window, he spotted his younger sister sitting before an open textbook. She wrote, erased, and wrote again. She looked completely exhausted as she rubbed her eyes. His sister was alive. He took a step toward the entrance, but an evolved security scanner swept the front doors. The protective pearl hid most of him, but rising emotion made his aura push against the barrier. If he walked inside and a single alarm went off, Apex Dominion would learn exactly who mattered to him, so he stayed hidden, remembering his mother's plea to protect Autumn. Standing 20 yards away, while she believed he was dead, felt like failing that promise, yet walking closer risked getting her killed. He watched until the final class ended. Autumn packed her book slowly, pausing right beside the window. For a second, her gaze drifted toward the exact spot where he stood. Bloodville kept him completely hidden, but he still stepped back. She adjusted her backpack and headed down the stairs alone. He carefully memorized her route, the security cameras, and every face near the exit. Protection was his only safe contact that night, so he slipped away before she could spot him. By 10 o'clock that under a rising moon, Kirk's squad slips into the West Beast Zone. The trees are thick, deadly predators lurk in every shadow. Garrett waits. They clear the low-tier beasts. Then he steps out from his blood veil and blocks their path. Kirk Redmond freezes first, the cheap captain. He looks older than he did under the Python, yet still ready to sacrifice someone else. His squad raises weapons. Kirk stares at the scar. His blade failed to leave. Recognizing Garrett, he gasps. Garrett smiles. The flat-topped mocker laughs, joking that the cheap porter actually survived. He sneers that Kirk made the right call, sacrificing a dying nobody. The lightning bruiser nods in agreement. They say he should be grateful he did not die of decay in some apartment. Another member points at his coat, warning him to run before the captain sacrifices him twice. No doubts remain. Kirk's squad still believes he was right. They watched him slice Garrett, then they all fled. When the Python attacked, they ran. Now they still think his life is dirt cheap. Kirk raises one hand like he is settling a minor workplace dispute, offering to compensate him with $200 to disappear. The flat-topped mocker pulls out $200 bills and tosses them at Garrett's boots, sneering that it is more than a porter is worth. The cash does not even hit the dirt before Crimson Grave slashes his neck. His body drops beside the money. No one is laughing as the bruiser roars and unleashes everything he has. A blinding white bolt swallows Garrett whole. Trees split behind him. The massive blast lights the entire trail. As the light fades, smoke rolls off Twyla's combat jacket. Garrett's skin is untouched. The bruiser's mouth hangs open, brushing ash off his sleeve. Garrett calmly asks if that was his full attack. Before he can answer, a blood-red spike punches through his chest, dropping him beside the first man. 2 down, 6 terrified defenders remain. Kirk screams for formation. Garrett summons Marilla. Crimson light flares. As the living banshee steps onto the trail in black mist, Marilla looks at the armed squad, asking if these are the men who abandoned him. Every last one. Her death wail strikes before Kirk can finish his order. 3 collapse. Clutching their heads, Garrett uses Bloodstep to close in, shatters a weapon, and drives Crimson Grave into the dirt. Only 2 remaining. Try to flank Marilla. One chains her arms, the other charges Garrett with a broadsword, shouting that Kirk will promote whoever takes his head. Marilla lets the chain tighten. Then she dissolves into black mist, reforming behind him to drop him with one sharp note. Garrett catches the broad blade with Twyla's new gauntlets, twisting it from his hands, and kicks him directly into Crimson Grave. Their knees buckle as he finishes the squad off. They earned his hatred. Kirk bought time. He backs away from 7 dead bodies and reaches inside his jacket for a syringe of black market enhancement serum. Twyla's file warned him. This dangerous drug forces a temporary rank jump while tearing the user apart from within. Kirk stabs it into his neck. Dark lines spread as muscles swell. The ground cracks beneath his heavy boots, his threat level rising to silver metal. For seconds, the bargain bin captain believed he had purchased a comeback. Then he swung and hit empty air. He sliced Kirk's shoulder from behind, sending him spinning. He opened Kirk's thigh from the other side. Kirk turned again, finding only darkness. That was when Night Predator finally introduced itself. After dark, his speed Exploded and every cut bled far longer than it should. Kirk had chosen a night. Mission very considerate. Kirk fired steel blades in every direction. One sliced his cheek, the rest hit trees. He appeared in front of him, breaking his knee. Kirk collapsed, trying to crawl, gasping to kill him. He pulled out one of Twila's high-grade potions from the case. Morla watched him pour it over his wounds, broken flesh sealed. His breathing steadied, even the damaged knee pulled back into place. Kirk looked hopeful for one stupid second, then he broke the other knee. Morla looked at him carefully, pledging her complete loyalty. But he heard a second sentence coming, calling him a total sadist. He glanced at Kirk, calling it healthier than being labeled merciful. Kirk begged. Again, he healed him again. Every 5 seconds, Kirk received another chance to understand what his 5-second sacrifice had bought him. He kept every wound non-fatal. Kirk's mind stayed clear. Then he made Kirk look at every squad member who had defended the betrayal. Kirk offered money first, then equipment, then the names of people who had bought his squad services. He kept dragging him. Kirk still thought someone else should suffer for his choices. He pushed the last unopened potion back into Twila's case, mocking his $200 offer to save his premium package. Then he caught him by the collar and started dragging him west. The Titan Python's lair was less than a mile away. Kirk understood the destination before they reached the slope. Kirk whispered no as the forest shook. The 100-meter Titan Python rose through the trees. It was that armored head he had seen before. The summoning circle saved him. It looked at him first, then it smelled Kirk's blood. He guessed his blood fiend aura made him seem less like prey. That was only a guess. The Python never filed an explanation. Kirk clawed at the dirt, shouting that his survival proved the decision worked and was actually impressive. The man had reached the monster's mouth and still found one more bad argument. He lifted Kirk by his jacket, reminding him of his useless life speech. By everyone else's time, Kirk looked into the Python's open jaws, screaming that he threw him. The Titan Python snapped forward and swallowed Kirk Redmond whole. Kirk received no speech, forgiveness, or appeal. That monster finished his revenge. Level 30 reached. Soul Forge permanently unlocked. Sylvie's Night Blood Greatsword became available through their follower bond. Without Blood Sovereign form, Morla watched the Python settle back among the trees. Morla mentioned that Kirk called him disposable. He looked at the empty slope. Threw him away. He returned Kirk to the same monster. Then the system screamed. Danger warning. Target identified as Dashiell Donovan. Threat level overwhelming. The leaked blood fiend aura had led Dashiell straight toward him. He had no blood sovereign charge left. He dismissed Morla and opened the Crimson Prison Arena before the warning reached its second pulse. The forest vanished. Beneath him, the arena preparation room locked around his body. He learned later that Dashiell arrived seconds after he disappeared. The enemy followed the blood trail to the Titan Python. One horn curved farther than the other. Absolute asymmetry. It offended him. He attacked the 100-meter beast. Honestly, who knew what symmetry would actually do for his survival? No exit. The arena locked down until Garrett cleared another floor. The Crimson Prison sealed shut behind him. Before Dashiell even reached the Titan Python, he used it as an emergency exit, but the system treated that as consent to another death match. The screen read Floor 2. Every route home was blocked. One cleared. Fight. That was his price for hiding from a legendary hunter. Weapon wall offered decent choices again. Garrett ignored them completely. The Whip of Tender discipline hung beneath a clear warning. Each successful strike increases the target's attack power. Repeated strikes stack. The description said target not enemy. Honestly, the system's cursed equipment department must have hired a lawyer for his buff. Garrett chose to summon a follower into the arena. Red light flashed. Twila Hargrove appeared in a burst of steam, one hand still holding a shower towel. The arena immediately replaced it with temporary black combat clothing and boots. Twila looked down, total shock. Then she glared at the whip in his hand, saying his name slowly. In her defense, she picked that buff before knowing his schedule. He had entered her apartment, kissed her, disappeared, and basically kidnapped her from her shower. Garrett lifted the whip, claiming the sequence sounded worse when organized. Like that, ice spread. Hadley Thornton, the arena's loud floor host, boomed over the ring before Twila could freeze him. Floor 2 challengers enter. The gate rose. Twila walked through first, muttering that she would kill him after this. Talk about mixed signals. Her affinity actually rose. Totally exposed her again. The arena was a black stone basin surrounded by Burning pillars, Hadley floated above the crowd, seeing Twyla beside him. The challenger brought the woman, whose uniform he ruined at the cemetery. Hadley announced. Twyla's frost reached the front seats. Garrett pointed at Hadley. No context, but the crowd had already chosen their preferred. Context. Then the opposite gate exploded. Freya Dawes entered through a wall of fire, a deadly adult flame witch and the Floor 2 champion, beautiful enough to make an active furnace look incredibly inviting. Freya's red hair lifted, flames curled around both arms. She looked at Twyla's ice, then at Garrett's whip, asking what was the challenger. Garrett raised the whip, answering that emotionally it was both. Hadley dropped her hand. Freya instantly attacked. Fire crossed the arena before Twyla finished raising her guard. Twyla built ice walls, but the first layer vanished. Cracks raced through the second, the third through both of them. Backward, Freya walked through the steam, completely unfazed. Twyla launched 6 ice spears. Freya melted 5 and caught the last between 2 flaming fingers, mocking her as a gold lower who brought winter clothing to a volcano. Twyla told her to keep talking. Freya smiled, promising she would. The 2 women had known each other for 30 seconds. They already needed separate corners. Garrett read the whip's rules again, while Freya gathered another attack. Each successful strike increased the target's power, so he turned toward Twyla. Saw the decision forming in his eyes as Garrett cracked the whip across her back. Her armor took the hit. A number 1 flashed on the whip's counter. Twyla's ice thickened instantly. She stared blankly at the invisible system notification, then glared at Garrett's face. Twyla demanded to know what he just did, but Garrett simply said he improved her. Twyla snapped back, do it, without enjoying the explanation. Freya hurled a fire spear straight toward them, but Twyla easily blocked it with one hand. That was proof enough. Garrett struck again, sending the counter to 2, 5, then 12. The whip had almost no physical power, but its magic left a deep heat beneath her skin. Every single strike made Twyla's ice surge. Freya stopped laughing around. Stack 20, Hadley stopped her commentary around stack 30. By stack 40, heavy frost had climbed up every burning pillar. Twyla gritted her teeth and kept going. How many, she asked. 41, Garrett replied, noting the system was counting while Twyla survived. Then Freya threw both hands upward. The ceiling of the arena erupted in fire, and Hadley finally found her voice again. The champion was preparing her ultimate attack. Twyla stared up at the burning sky and looked back. Garrett did not make her ask twice. Counter climbed past 50. Freya dragged the entire flaming ceiling into one descending mass, 60 stacks. The intense heat split the stone beneath their boots. 68. Twyla's breath turned white, and Garrett landed the final strike. The counter stopped at 69. Freya unleashed her attack, sending a sunbright wave crashing down toward the ring. Twyla stepped in front of Garrett and raised her hand. Her ice clashed with the fire in midair. The flames stopped, and frost raced backward through the burning wave. It froze every pillar, catching Freya before the flame witch could even retreat. Freya's fire armor instantly turned to solid ice, leaving only her face exposed. Twyla walked across the frozen battlefield and tapped a single finger against her opponent's forehead. Surrender, she ordered. Freya glared past her at Garrett. He hit you 69 times. Twyla's cheeks flushed. Focus on your own defeat. Freya stared at her frozen arms and surrendered, but her eyes stayed locked on Garrett. Next time, fight her yourself. Garrett lifted the whip with a grin. Careful. That sounded like a date. Twyla tapped the ice again. Focus on losing first. The arena crowd erupted as Hadley lowered her microphone. Floor 2 was cleared through aggressive teamwork and some highly questionable readings of the rules. The bond registered Freya Dawes completing Floor 2. As the portal opened beneath them, Garrett and Twyla returned straight to her apartment, still carrying every single battle wound and whip aftereffect Twyla made. It only 3 steps before collapsing onto the couch. The weapon's magic had faded, but heat still burned under her skin. Garrett caught her elbow as she pointed. Bedroom, massage her, Garrett. Garrett blinked. That sounded dangerously like a command. He reminded her that he led an evolved team. She noted he was still wearing her coat over his arena clothes. The coat returned with her through the bond, and she quickly pulled it closed. Massage her, she repeated. Garrett worked the tension from her shoulders while she complained about every single strike. By stack 20, her complaints grew much quieter. Round stack 40, she leaned back against him. At 69, she accidentally called him Master. The room went dead silent, and Twyla quickly covered her face in pure embarrassment. Heard nothing. Her affinity jumped again. I heard 69 complaints and 1. Promotion, she turned and grabbed his shirt. Keep talking and I'll demote. The threat ended in a kiss, he checked her eyes and asked whether she wanted him to stop. Twyla answered by locking the bedroom door. Before dawn, the system filled his vision. Follower affinity 100%. Unique follower reward received. Blood sovereign form charge increased by 1. There it was, a second one use charge earned through Twyla's completed bond. Before he needed it, then Blood Fiend essence moved through them. Twyla Hargrove advanced to Diamond. Her ice aura filled the apartment and turned every window. White, red, and black light gathered above her heart. Permanent Soul Forge answered. It in a dark silver crown formed in his hands. Exclusive equipment acquired. Night Sovereign Crown. Effect, improved magic output, mental speed and command. Pressure, the crown registered inside Soul Forge as permanent equipment. Twyla opened her eyes. Diamond pressure rolled through the apartment. She checked his face first, then her own hands. He placed the crown against his head. Twyla examined him. You look arrogant. I killed a captain, escaped his replacement, and won a fire match with a whip. You looked arrogant before that. Good, Diamond rank had not damaged her honesty. After sunrise, he asked Twyla for money because Autumn still needed a living allowance. I can't use my own identity yet, he told her. Twyla opened her banking app without making him explain twice how much. He named the amount. She transferred more. He stared at the screen. You added 0. I added food, rent, school costs, and the possibility that teenagers need things their brothers forget. He stopped arguing and accepted the transfer. He used Blood Veil on the evening school route and left the money where Autumn would find it without seeing him. He stayed outside the cameras and did not wait for her reaction. The daily quest was also still active. Near the night college building, he found an adult attendee walking alone beneath the streetlights. Blood Veil hid his approach. He took one quick non-lethal sample, completed the quest, and left. Before panic could spread, when he returned, Twyla's phone was flashing. With missed alerts, her 2 subordinates had vanished. The same men Sylvie petrified at the graveyard were now witnesses to Callum's death. Dashiell had ordered them taken because their stories could break Twyla's lie. Twyla's new diamond aura cracked the floor around her boots. Stay here, she told him. He looked at the frost climbing her walls. That sentence had never worked on him. This is my team. Twyla pulled on her uniform. They were taken because they followed me. She left before he could answer. What happened at the Apex Dominion warehouse came to him later through Twyla, her rescued men, and the security footage. Twyla entered alone through the loading bay. The fire enforcer from Dashiell's interrogation waited between her bound subordinates and the exit. He laughed when he saw her. Gold Lower came to negotiate, he said. Twyla removed her gloves. Update your information. The fire enforcer attacked first. Flames covered both arms and struck the floor hard enough to throw her men against their restraints. Twyla walked through a blast. Diamond ice sealed the flames against his own skin. The enforcer tried. Frost spread from his boots, climbing up his body and freezing his chest solid. He collapsed before even reaching the door. The system confirmed another follower kill. Twyla freed her men. One subordinate just stared. He was shocked. When did she reach diamond rank? Twyla pulled him upright, telling him it happened after his abduction. They almost made it out, but suddenly every chain in the warehouse went taut. Then Dashiell Donovan arrived. He wore matching silver glasses. He stopped instantly. A single broken crate was out of alignment. His face tightened. The symmetry-obsessed maniac had finally arrived. He judged the messy layout before his gaze drifted downward. He stared at the dead enforcer, then noticed Twyla's diamond aura. Dashiell mocked her, prompting Twyla to unleash a massive storm of ice blades. As the frozen blades flew, Dashiell raised a hand. They stopped instantly. He sent the entire storm back at her, shattering her defensive barriers. The force shattered everything, throwing her across the floor. She struggled to stand. Dashiell calmly tucked away his glasses, aligning them inside his coat. His cold gaze met hers. Crushing pressure locked her in place. Her men attacked, but Dashiell swatted them aside without even looking. He raised his hand toward her neck. Just then, the notification flashed. The fire enforcer was dead. Twyla had won her fight. Her squad was safe, but they were deep in enemy territory. Now every hunter knew exactly where she was. He immediately summoned Sylvie, who flashed into the room from Nightville. Sensing his serious mood, she skipped her usual jokes. They teleported in. They arrived just as Dashiell moved to strike, triggering his ultimate skill. A massive burst of crimson energy tore through the entire space. He caught the villain's wrist just before impact, shocking Dashiell completely. With one swift tear, he ripped the enforcer's entire arm clean off. He stepped in front of Twyla, stating the first charge belonged to Sylvie. This second strike was payback for the innocent people he had abducted. Free from his paralyzing gaze, Twyla smiled. Dashiell shrieked in pain. 6 dark wings erupted from his back, activating his Reaper form. His arm regenerated instantly under heavy black armor as a scythe materialized. Suddenly, a system warning flashed. Kill Dashiell within 5 minutes. Failing this urgent quest meant facing a severe penalty. Dashiell admired his fresh limbs, whispering about his beloved sense of balance. Honestly, the guy sounded completely insane talking about perfect symmetry. With one massive swing, a dark energy wave sliced the roof and hit him. The villain boasted of his god-slaying power, but his target barely flinched. Dashiell's grin vanished as the hero instantly closed the distance, using Blood Step. He seized Dashiell's right arm, lopping it off with his massive dark sword. The villain healed it, so the hero immediately sliced off the other one. He smirked, declaring their symmetry restored. Sylvie laughed nearby. Panicking, Dashiell spread his 6 wings and escaped through the shattered ceiling. Taking the fight outside was his last desperate hope to survive the onslaught. With his 10-minute form ticking down and 3 minutes already gone, he leaps after him. His blood-sovereign power launches him high enough to seize Dashiell by the ankle. Dashiell kicks free, rising above the warehouse and drawing his scythe back. Preparing another strike, Dashiell laughs, "You cannot fight in my sky." But look at this, Garrett appears behind him, instantly grabbing his neck. Slapping him down, Dashiell crashes through the warehouse roof and multiple floors, smashing into the hard concrete beneath, struggling to rise from the deep crater. Garrett lands beside him, raising his Nightblood greatsword to unleash Crimson Moon Wrath. The slash ends Dashiell Donovan before the 5-minute mark, reaching level 36. Unlocking Crimson Torrent, a forward blood blast, along with a special reward. The legendary Blood Moon token. This unique item can summon 1 hour of Artificial Night, doubling the power of all Blood Race allies caught inside it. This Blood Moon token is built for a much larger fight than Dashiell. As Garrett's Blood Sovereign charge expires, Twyla is the first to reach him. Her rescued men stare at the dead legend, rethinking every single rumor about him. Garrett tells Twyla to leave Ridgeway with him, but she flatly refuses. She explains that if she disappears, the Scarlet Bastion will become his enemy. If she stays, she can watch the other factions and warn him first. He points out she nearly died, but Twyla steps closer, demanding he protect her. Touching his forehead to hers, he promises to protect her, holding her hand very briefly. He lets her return to her post, though future Apex Dominion records show the truth. What went down that same night with Ambrose Donovan, their dying CEO? The grieving father of Callum and Dashiell immediately left his private sanatorium. He sensed both family bonds go completely silent, rushed to headquarters, and found them. Ambrose stopped searching for a lone killer. He wanted the whole city targeting Garrett. Dashiell's death drags his powerful father straight into the war. Soon after, Ambrose Donovan summons Ridgeway City's major evolved leaders to an emergency council. And trust me, the official files paint an incredibly ugly picture of that meeting. Ambrose had buried 2 sons in mere days and demanded the entire city pay. Ariella Crosby chaired the room. She was the supreme tier head of their association. This made her the absolute authority and the one person Ambrose couldn't command. Ambrose demanded a massive, citywide manhunt for the vicious blood fiend who killed his sons, but Ariella calmly questions what else Garrett has even targeted. Ambrose glared in response, while the third faction chair quietly tapped the table. Callum tried to capture him, and Dashiell abducted Scarlet Bastion's people. Actually attacked the city. Cormac Sullivan, leader of the Strict Justice Guild, agrees. He refuses to march his people into an unknown nest for one family's revenge. Shelby Langley, leader of an all-women combat guild, leans back with a smirk. She openly refuses to volunteer her warriors for a rich man's family funeral. Ariella enforces a 30-day delay to gather intelligence and secure supreme backup. Ambrose slams his hands down, calling their refusal pure cowardice and warning that this blood fiend will target their own families next. Cormac starts standing up, but Ariella releases a heavy pressure that pins everything flat. She commands him not to spin the entire city just to bury his fallen sons, but Ambrose orders them anyway. The third faction chair looked away. Shelby did not. Cormac slowly lowered his hand. Nobody moved. The grieving tyrant entered, expecting an army, leaving with his own people and witnesses to the refusal. At the time, he only knew the factions had not moved yet, so he used the delay to strengthen his followers before Ambrose found another route. That night, he summoned Morla Crawford to an old lake outside Ridgeway. Morla was his living Banshee follower from Arena Floor 1. Her affinity sat close to 100, but compliments had stopped moving it. She arrived in black mist and studied the moonlit water. This place feels lonely, Morla said. It was useful for that. They followed a narrow trail through tall reeds. The first stalk brushed Morla's arm. She flinched hard enough to step into him. Her body was still hypersensitive from the paralysis. Cucumber, he caught her around the waist. Morla looked up. You chose a reed field while knowing my condition. In his defense, the lake existed before the cucumber. A second reed touched her shoulder. Her affinity rose. The system had the emotional subtlety of a live scoreboard. He carried Morla through the thickest patch before the plants turned the walk into a medical incident. She looped both arms around his neck. This is undignified, she whispered. You surrendered to produce in front of an arena crowd. Morla rested her chin on his shoulder. You always ruin the romantic part. Her affinity rose again. At the water, he set her down on the old wooden platform where he used to sit. After work, Morla asked why he had come there before becoming a blood fiend. He told her the truth. When the doctors confirmed Rift Decay would kill him, he came to that lake whenever Autumn was asleep. His sister never needed to watch. In panic about leaving her alone, he sat by the water, counting what little money he had, planning one more week at a time. Morla took his hand. You were preparing to die, she said. He was preparing to keep her safe after he did. Morla moved closer until their shoulders touched. Then let me help you stay alive instead. Follower affinity, 100%. Crimson light covered the lake. The water pulled away from the shore as a massive black fortress. Towers unfolded from the glow. Bridges locked into place. A central keep floated over the water with enough room to shelter an entire village. Unique follower reward acquired. Crimson Keep. Crimson Keep restores injuries and stabilizes registered residents inside its walls. A second light gathered over Morla's heart. Permanent soul forge formed a dark pendant in his palm. Exclusive equipment acquired. Morla's Wraith Pendant. Effects: increased spirit control resistance and limited magic nullification. Morla stared at the pendant. Soul Forge pulled that from me, she said. Does that make it our spiritual child? He fastened it around his neck. Please do not make the necklace responsible for family paperwork. Morla considered that. He was spiritually married. The doomed prophet had become a soulmate with administrative objections. Inside Crimson Keep, Morla declared that their hearts and souls had already chosen each other. Then she kissed him. He checked that the choice was hers. Morla told him to stop asking obvious questions. Crimson Keep's doors closed behind them. By morning, the Blood Fiend essence finished processing. Morla Crawford advanced to Tier 5 middle. Her Banshee aura rattled the windows. Crimson Keep gave him a secure base and a healer, but he still lacked raw power to crush a city, so he entered the arena again as Floor 3. Opened beneath a blood-red sky. Hadley Thornton, the floor host, hovered above the ring, spotting the Wraith Pendant. Hadley mocked the new jewelry, joking that the challenger was finally dressing like someone with survival instincts. Then the opposing gate ground open, and Sabine Whitfield charged out. The massive centaur champion wielded a heavy shield and a long lance. Pure raw rage. Then Sabine slammed her massive shield down, demanding he attack. Her taunt magic forced his body to move forward. The curse compelled him to strike, but her shield absorbed every ounce of force. Fueling her glowing lance, he delivered a single punch, making the shield glow. Her weapon flared. Sabine demanded harder hits while Hadley muttered from above, wisely choosing to stay silent. The taunt picked his target, but he kept control over his power, lightly tapping her shield with 2 fingers. It barely glowed. Sabine bristled. He tapped it again, and she snarled at the insult. He told her he was managing expectations, which only made her taunt harder. He complied, delivering the weakest possible strikes his body could make. Her shield absorbed practically nothing, leaving her lance totally weak. Pride did the rest, and Sabine tossed her shield aside, charging with both hands on the lance. He triggered blood step at the last second. She missed completely. Crimson Grave suddenly erupted around all 4 of her legs, pinning them to the stone. Sabine shattered the Initial restraints, but he leaped onto her back, locking an arm around her neck. Squeezing the tight chokehold as she weakened, Sabine bucked wildly. Cracking the floor, he clung on, and she blacked out right before her. Restraints even shattered. Waking up in the victory circle, she glared at her. Dropped shield then at him still on her back. Move, Sabine snarled. He stepped down, reminding her she wanted it harder. He changed tactics, but Sabine kept. Glaring as the victory circle registered her, floor 3 was officially cleared. Victor Bond registered Sabine Whitfield. Hadley looked down at the centaur. Noting the champion had demanded harder hits, discarded her shield, and got ridden. Straight into defeat, he pointed upward, calling Hadley's summary incredibly hostile. Hadley countered they were accurate. He pushed onto floor 4 before his. Injuries could convince him to act sensible. The next arena seemed completely empty. Suddenly, the floor sprouted tentacles as Briar Montrose rose from the center. The Mimic champion had a human upper half shifting into a mass of tentacles. She smiled at his pendant, wondering if it could survive her poison. Before he could draw his greatsword, thick tentacles bound both his arms. Sharp barbs pierced through his coat, spreading toxic poison across his ribs and... Slowing his hands, Briar dragged him closer, whispering he should just surrender. Just then his daily blood quest flashed. Briar was a living adult woman. And as a stray tentacle brushed past his mouth, he bit it, her smile. Shattered, quest complete, assimilation triggered. Briar gasped, asking if he just bit her. She demanded, but he had a deadline. Her grip tightened as he activates Blood Veil, vanishing his aura and sound within her coils. Briar's tentacles squeeze the spot she thinks he still stands, slipping beneath. Then he draws Nightblood Greatsword, cutting himself free, Crimson Grave pins. 3 tentacles to the floor. Now watch, blood spikes force the rest from his throat. Briar opens a third eye across her forehead, and black light strikes his face, but his wraith pendant grows cold. Morella's reward blocks the control effect, shattering the magic before it reaches his mind. Briar stares at the pendant and he smiles. Her poison only slowed him, and that eye did nothing. Using blood step, he reaches her center, wrapping Crimson Grave around her body before her. Tentacles can recover. Briar struggles once, then slowly raises both hands. Surrender, she mostly wants to know why biting him worked. Get in line, he replies. Floor 4 is cleared. Victor's Bond registers Briar Montrose. Poison resistance acquired. Briar Bind is unlocked. A tentacle restraint skill. Hadley opens the exit and gives him one final warning. Floor 5 is a boss floor where Isadora Grieve, the Gorkin Queen, is waiting, but floor 5 can wait, his body cannot. Not back at Nightville Village, Crimson Keep reduces the war's damage, but his arena wounds still follow him home. Sylvie treats his remaining poison burns along with his cuts and bruises. She ties the last bandage tighter than necessary, complaining that he keeps entering places that only return him damaged. He points out he always returns, but she warns that answer will stop being cute. Catching her hand, he says he needs enough power before that day arrives. Sylvie stays angry but finishes dressing his wounds. While he recovers, Ambrose chooses murder after meeting refuses his demands. Records uncovered much later show the desperate bargain where Ambrose promises his inheritance to Dr. Odette Radcliffe, his personal doctor, in exchange for helping him avenge both his sons. Odette had already examined Callum's recovered body, allowing her to copy the Blood Fiend's residue. At one guild checkpoint, she slaughters the guards and spreads that copied aura across the scene. Alarms catch only a single blood-colored blur before every signal dies, and grieving families reach the gate before the bodies are covered. Cormac sees his own people carried out under Victor's signature, demanding blood before anyone can even challenge the aura match. Odette strikes a second checkpoint, the exact same way, but this time, the casualties include women from Shelby's guild. She stops laughing about Ambrose's family war and immediately starts mobilizing her fighters. The third faction, however, notices the glaring mismatch. Victor's known targets always attacked him or his people, yet these guards never met him and none were drained. This frame job gives Ambrose the furious backing his authority could never win. Ridgeway splits between blind rage and deep suspicion. Then Dorothea Hargrove visits Twila's apartment, her estranged mother, and the formidable head of the Scarlet Bastion. Years of cold distance vanish when her daughter becomes the link between two dead Donovan heirs and a hunted blood fiend. Twila later recounts how that visit went. Dorothea entered without an embrace, confronting her for lying to Scarlet Bastion. For him, Twyla blocks the doorway, mocking her mother for disappearing only to return. Searching, Dorothea claims she returned because the city might attack her daughter, but Twyla retorts she returned for useful secrets. Dorothea asks if Victor still thinks like a human, but Twyla refuses to answer, so Dorothea uses her. Dorothea used her memory reading gift, touching Twyla's forehead before she could even pull away. The memories showed that bargain bin captain cutting Garrett and the younger Donovan treating them like property. Dorothea also saw Garrett's coat around Twyla's shoulders, his sister at school, and every choice Twyla made after the graveyard. It also showed enough private moments to make Dorothea release her daughter with a perfectly controlled expression, while Twyla slapped her hand away. You could have asked, Twyla snapped. You would have lied, Dorothea answered. Twyla insisted she would have chosen what belonged to her. Twyla stayed furious even after Dorothea found a useful answer, her eyes landing on Garrett's coat around Twyla's shoulders. He is Garrett Durham, the porter Kirk left for dead, she noted, facing the door. He still protects his sister, his followers, and the people who took him. In Scarlet Bastion will not join the hunt, Dorothea declared, choosing to protect him. Until the association hears the truth. Twyla did not thank her, even though Dorothea had chosen Garrett's side while hurting her own daughter in the same minute. Dorothea kept that decision from Garrett for now. He only knew that strangers were murdered beneath his aura signature, sending angry guilds turning toward him while his newest followers were still learning to fight together. He expected the next fight to happen in Ridgeway, but Ambrose had a much more cowardly plan to bring the entire city right to Garrett's home by redirecting Ridgeway's angry guilds toward Nightville Village. So the next morning, Garrett stopped waiting and went on the offensive. He took Sylvie and 3 arena followers right into a dangerous spider cave outside Ridgeway City. Freya brought fire and Sabine was his centaur tank, with Briar bringing poison and enough tentacles to ruin any normal formation. The cave held enough monsters to level a full team, and he needed them cleared before Ambrose brought an army home. The entrance dropped into total darkness, and he looked over at Freya Dawes, his adult flame witch follower from Arena Floor 2. He pointed into the dark to light the tunnel, and Freya's hair ignited. She boasted that armies burn when she moves, and he simply nodded down the tunnel, telling her to burn the darkness first. Briar covered a laugh with her hand. Sabine laughed openly. Freya formed a fireball above her palm, then let it shrink until the tunnel went black again. Twyla defeated her. Freya snapped. He only stood behind her holding that ridiculous whip. Victor's bond might drag her here, but he had never beaten her himself. There it was, the living lamp had filed a workplace grievance. Freya launched the fireball at his chest. He crossed both arms and took the blast. His coat burned at the edges, but crimson Keep had restored his arena wounds, and his new resistance held. Freya followed with a second flame spear. He used Bloodstep, appeared beside her, and activated Briar's bind. Red-black tentacles burst from the cave floor, wrapping Freya's wrists, waist, and ankles before she could turn. She burned through the first layer. He added Crimson Grave beneath her feet, pinning the remaining restraints to the stone. Freya pulled until the walls cracked. She called it a cheap trick, demanding a real fight. He admitted he did, ordering the restraints tightened to stop her flames, challenging her to take the oath because she chose to follow him rather than acting like Twyla still owned her defeat. That hit harder than any tentacles. Freya glared for several breaths before finally repeating, "Take the eternal loyalty oath," declaring him her commander. Freya actually acknowledged direct orders, her affinity spiking instantly. He let go as Freya straightened her scorched sleeves, muttering that he was still using her as a lamp. He pointed deeper into the cavern, calling her a respected tactical lamp. Briar slithered close, wrapping a tentacle round his arm, asking if she could play the blanket. He stared at the tentacle. He replied that blankets usually wait for permission. Briar smirked while Sylvie peeled her off, telling her to stand several feet further from her lord. Briar only smiled wider, calling it fear of competition. Instantly, Sylvie's wings flared. Sabine dropped her lance between them, telling them to save the mating spat for after the killing. The centaur had been inside the cavern for 10 minutes and already wanted hazard pay. Freya conjured a bright flame above the group as they moved forward. The first tunnel opened into a massive chamber blanketed in ancient webbing, shattered armor, and animal bones cluttered the corners. Countless tiny claw marks scored the stone floor, leading towards several side passages. Something had been feeding there for years. Sabine inspected the tunnels, noting the young hid beyond the walls, and offered to call them her Taunt had forced him to attack in the arena. Here, it could drag every nearby spider straight to them. He quickly stationed the team around the chamber. Sylvie claimed the high ledge while Freyja guarded the rear with fire. Briar drove half her tentacles into the stone. He anchored the center of the room. Sabine slammed her lance against her shield, sending a massive taunt echoing through the cave. Suddenly, the walls began moving. Spiders flooded out of every tunnel, swarmed across the ceiling, and squeezed through cracks right beneath their feet. The first wave choked the chamber, with thousands more following. Sabine braced her shield, grinning that they answered properly. He told her not to sound so proud of the absolute nightmare. Suddenly, the swarm hit. The front wave scrambled over Sabine's shield, attempting to crush her under sheer mass. Lowering her shoulders, she dug all 4 hooves into the ground, holding the tunnel mouth. While hard shells scraped violently against her armor, Briar quickly slipped tentacles between Sabine's legs, ripping the smaller spiders away before they could target her. Underside, Sabine snapped at her to watch it, but Briar flung them into the wall, telling her to stop storing enemies down there. Sabine's ears shattered. Their teamwork still needed supervision, but it somehow worked. Sylvie's petrifying wave turned the front ranks into stone. Spiders behind them climbed over the dead and kept coming. Freya swept fire overhead. Burning pests rained down into Briar's waiting tentacles. Briar spun and hurled them back into the packed tunnels. Then Sylvie, Freya, and Briar attacked together. Violet magic-hardened shells fire cracked them. Poison tentacles ripped through everything that survived. The system started pouring follower experience into Garrett. His levels surged, skills strengthened. The chamber filled with dead spiders faster than new ones could enter. A giant spider leaped over Sabine's shield. Garrett raised his hand. A massive red-black hand, larger than his own body, formed above the floor, clamping around the creature in midair. Fiend's grasp permanently unlocked. This new skill let him seize and bind targets beyond his physical reach. He crushed the spider, then used that massive hand to sweep a second group into Freya's flames. The tunnels went quiet. Thousands of spiders lay dead across the chamber. His team had wiped them out without losing. Freya looks at the smoking floor, asking if he still thinks she is a lamp. He nods toward the bodies, calling her an aggressively promoted lamp. Her mouth twitches before she can reply, but the experience gain suddenly stops, which means only one thing: a nest. This huge needs a queen. They had cleared out everything except the actual monster, big enough to build it. He looks up just as the ceiling splits open. A tier 6 spider queen drops straight through the webbing, spraying deadly green acid before anyone can even react. Sabine quickly raises her shield. The burning liquid hits hard, spilling around the edges, melting right through the leather straps. Another stream of acid splashes directly beneath Sylvie. She leaps away, but sticky webbing wraps around her wings and slams her into the wall. Thicker silk binds Sabine's legs, dragging the massive centaur across the floor. The Spider Queen completely ignores Freya's roaring flames and Briar's thrashing tentacles, its eyes locked directly onto Sylvie. She has the weakest presence in the entire room, making her the perfect target. The Queen spots the vulnerable follower and lunges forward, raising a massive, razor-sharp claw. He instantly activates Blood Step, blurring straight through the pool of boiling acid. The poison in the liquid melts his boots and sears his skin, but his passive resistance keeps his legs moving forward. He cuts off the claw just in time, summoning his Nightblood greatsword. He swings upward in a brutal arc. The Queen's severed limb flies across the cave and impales itself right next to Freya. Dark, corrosive blood sprays over his shoulder. Sylvie tears herself loose from the webs and catches him. Clutching his coat, she tells him that was reckless. He simply points out that the spider was trying to eat her. She looks at the giant severed limb, whispering her approval as her affinity levels flash in the system. The beast shrieks in agony and falls to the ground. He immediately summons Myrla. A crimson portal opens wide. The terrifying banshee appears, takes one quick look at the charging boss, and lets loose a devastating death wail without even waiting for an explanation. The shockwave shatters the Queen's focus, stopping her dead in her tracks. Briar's dark tentacles wrap around the remaining claw, pulling with immense force. Sabine, he roars. The mighty centaur tears her leg free and triggers her taunt. The Queen instantly turns away from Sylvie to strike this new, louder threat. Sabine blocks the incoming blow with her cracked shield, the force sliding her across the stone floor. But it buys Freya the crucial moments she needs to burn Sylvie free. He dashes forward through the poison once more, clamping his fiend's grasp around the monster's jaws. The massive construct clamps its mouth shut. Briar wraps her heavy shadows around the flailing legs while Myrla screams again. Freya floods the gaps with fire while Sylvie's petrification begins to slowly creep over the beast's severed joint, but the queen rips free of the constraints, lifting Sabine straight into the air. Freya immediately targets the exposed, soft belly. With a massive lance of concentrated fire, the monster buckles from the sheer pain, then unleashes a spray of acid right through the flames. Searing poison floods the room, forcing Freya to retreat. Briar attempts to bind the spider's back legs, but the sharp shell slices clean through her grip. They instantly regenerate, but that split-second delay almost costs Sabine her life. Myrla modifies her wail into a quick, high-frequency pulse. The queen's grasp falters for a single second. That is all she needs. Sabine drives her lance through the thick webbing above, dropping down to land safely right beside him. She lowers her weapon, shouting for another round. The proud centaur has stopped arguing. Talk about a major shift. He finally has a coordinated unit now instead of 6 lone wolves. He drives Crimson Grave deep into the stone, sending blood-red spikes up to impale every remaining leg. The fiend's grasp forced the queen's head down, while the entire team seized the same. Opening, her shell split as Crimson Grave tore through the weakened center and ripped the spider queen apart. The Tier 6 aura vanished, and for 1 second, nobody moved. Then Sabine dropped from the web, landing on all 4 feet. Freya extinguished the cave ceiling. Briar released her restraints, and Sylvie kept her hand on Garrett's burned shoulder. Level 42 reached, unlocking Kane's wrath. A high-output blood attack. The Spider Queen had treated Sylvie like the weak link, but now her body lay torn beneath the boots of the woman she tried to eat. That was a team win. Garrett allowed himself exactly one proud thought before the acid injuries started hurting in earnest. Briar examined the burns across all of them. My body regenerates, she said. Pieces of my tentacles carry the same healing. She sliced several clean strips from one tentacle, and the missing flesh regrew before hitting the ground. Garrett stared at the offered piece. This adventure kept finding bizarre new ways to make dinner threatening. Briar ate a piece first. Her burn closed, providing enough proof. They shared the regenerated flesh. Heat spread through Garrett's wounds, pushing out the acid and sealing his damaged skin. Then the secondary effect hit them. Briar's healing tissue also transferred her current emotional state. Briar was feeling quite affectionate, incredibly pleased with herself, and totally uninterested in personal space. Freya sat closer to Garrett, while Sylvie moved closer than Freya. Morla rested her head on his shoulder and informed everyone that their souls already had assigned seating. Garrett glanced at her. Did our souls reserve this spot? Morla closed her eyes. They have excellent taste. Sabine looked around the crowded healing circle. This is undisciplined, Sabine grunted. Briar curled one tentacle around Garrett's waist. You are the only one sitting far away. Sabine's jaw tightened. The healing instantly became a competitive sport, a new personal record for group instability. Freya and Briar had both risked themselves in the fight. Both had also chosen the follower oath freely when they asked for the same recognition Sylvie, Twyla, and Morla had received. Garrett checked their answers and granted it. The cave finally quieted. Then the system displayed every result. Freya Dawes, follower affinity 100%. Briar Montrose, follower affinity 100%. Both followers have broken their former class limits. Freya's flames compressed into a white-hot burn that softens stone without touching anyone beside her. Briar's tentacles regenerated beneath a dark venom sheen. She wrapped one around Garrett's chair. Sylvie removed it, but Briar replaced it. The first unique reward was a small red puppet shaped like Garrett. Blood substitute doll acquired, functioning to replace Garrett once at the instant of a fatal hit, good for 1 use. The second reward is a black execution frame wrapped in chains. Mournful Moon Gallows acquired, once locked on a single target. Raw strength cannot break the execution. 1 use. Garrett held 1 life and 1 death in his hands, both vanishing after a single use. Sabine stared at them, then at her own empty hands. She had tanked the queen's heaviest strikes and helped save Sylvie. While 2 newer bonds reached 100, Sabine turned away. I will train, she declared. Her voice remained controlled. 1 hoof cracked the stone beneath her. Solford answered as she walked away, and Freya's inferno mantle formed across Garrett's shoulders while Briar's venom earring appeared in his palm. One scaled with her searing fire while the other carried her poison, strengthening his own resistance. Freya settled the burning inferno mantle across his shoulders. Briar tapped her venom earring and smirked at Sylvie. Sabine just kept walking, her cracked hoofprints Said everything, that silent resentment was waiting. The Spider Queen's rewards gave him powerful tools, but flight was still missing if Ambrose brought an army up. There he couldn't leave the skies uncontested, that petrified adult orc. Reserve covered his daily quests during the time skip. Over the next few days he drove his team through one beast nest after another. Every raid ended in a clean, coordinated kill and a massive flood of experience. Freya stopped questioning his orders. Sabine hit harder. Briar learned when to bind targets instead of flirting. Sylvie kept the entire team from turning into some weaponized dating dispute. During their final raid, another deep threshold opened. Across his back, agony sliced right through his shoulder blades. He dropped down, feeling bone and blood energy reshaping behind him as Freya laughed even before the transformation finished. Freya watched those wings form. Your first landing will be ugly, he muttered about her support, but she folded her arms. I have watched you use stairs, she smirked. Massive crimson wings burst from his shoulders, lifting him above the trees. Unlocked at last, these wings let him fight aloft without even triggering his blood sovereign form. The doll, the gallows, the blood moon token, his faithful team, and his wings were ready. He unlocked them one raid too late. At Nightville Village, the first meteors were already crashing down, just as he unlocked those blood wings. Ambrose Donovan was already descending on the village with an army. He learned of the horror minutes later from Twyla and the surviving villagers. Ambrose had completely ignored the ban from the Federal Evolved Association. He gathered every guild enraged by the Captain Blood Fiend aura, marching them straight to his home. His command was simple: total extermination. Fire streaked across the morning sky as meteors crushed several homes, splitting open the village road and throwing burning timber through the town square. Succubi fled screaming from collapsing roofs, while evolved attackers breached the outer wall. Food stores burned. The old summoning chamber cracked under the second impact. This entire brutal attack was deliberate bait, planned because Ambrose wanted him back. Furious and careless, he targeted civilians because his two sons had proven their family preferred taking hostages over a clean hunt. Fortunately, Twyla got to Nightville first. His Diamond Ice follower had already tracked the invading coalition from Ridgeway using Scarlet Bastion intelligence. Their deep connection pointed her right to them. She landed in the square as another fire barrage crashed down. Twyla raised both hands, blooming massive ice flowers across the sky to swallow the flames. Their freezing petals folded, trapping the burning debris and dropping it safely away from the surviving homes. An apex fighter blindsided her from behind. A second frost flower erupted right through his armor, freezing him solid. Twyla swept across the square, freezing two more attackers and pulling a trapped succubus from under a shattered wall. A flaming beam plummeted towards some villagers near the well, but Twyla froze it in midair and shoved it aside, protecting them as the next explosive shockwave ripped through a single limb of their own. A village guard raised a spear at her uniform. He lowered it after that, turning to use that same spear against Ambrose's attackers. The villagers had first met her as the human trying to capture Garrett. Now she stood between them and the city. A Nightville guard demanded her name. Twyla planted an ice blade in the dirt, announcing she was Twyla Hargrove, Garrett's follower. Anyone who wants his people goes through me first. The guard opened the inner gate. Two more guards moved behind Twyla's ice wall. Nightville had accepted the woman who once tried to capture him. She extinguished the nearest houses, built ice barriers around the wounded, and drove the attackers back toward Ambrose's coalition. Then Twyla faced the assembled guilds. You were told Garrett murdered your people, Twyla shouted. His attacks targeted Apex Dominion. These victims were never drained, and they died exactly where Ambrose needed evidence. The Federal Evolved Association is already coming. Decide what you want them to find. Several guild fighters looked toward their leaders. The Capid aura had created rage. The mismatched victims created doubt. Cormac Sullivan, the rigid head of Civic Valor Guild, kept his weapon raised. His guards were still dead. Shelby Langley, leader of the Iron Sirens, stopped her women from charging while she looked at the burning village. Ambrose saw the hesitation and did what any cornered rat would do. He doubled down. Dr. Odette Radcliffe stood beside him in a diamond combat coat. Garrett knew her then only as his private doctor. She pointed at Twyla and called the accusation blood fiend manipulation. Kill the traitor before the association arrives, Odette ordered. Ambrose pointed at Twyla. Do it now, Ambrose raised both arms. Clouds twisted above Nightville. A meteor wider than the Village formed, a complete betrayal. The coalition finally understood the scale of his plan. He was willing to erase his own allies along with Garrett's people. Twyla built an ice dome over the village. Cracks spread across it before the meteor even fell. She held anyway. That stand bought him the last few seconds he needed. Bloodwings carried him over the mountain ridge. Below him, night fell. Everything burned beneath the giant meteor. Twyla stood alone at the center of the failing dome. Ambrose watched from outside the blast zone. Kane's dark wrath gathered through his arms. Folding his massive bloodwings, he dropped right onto the meteor center. That impact froze time for just a heartbeat. Then Kane's wrath exploded. Through the rock, blood-red force split the meteor right from the inside, burning. Debris rained around the village and crashed into empty slopes beyond the walls. The shockwave threw coalition fighters off their feet. He landed right in front of Twyla while fragments burned behind them. Her ice dome collapsed into glittering dust. Twyla looked at his wings, saying he took his time. He opened them wider, replying he was growing their transport. She touched a cracked armor near her ribs, telling him to grow faster next time. Her voice stayed sharp. Her hands lingered against his chest, a second longer than necessary. Then Ambrose stepped out of the haze. The grieving tyrant walked through the smoke, gray-haired and trembling from illness. Flames rolled from his shoulders and melted the stone beneath each step. His voice carried across the He confronts the coalition. Callum Donovan is dead, treated like a mere trophy. Pointing at Ambrose, he drops another bomb. He killed Dashiell Donovan too. The culprit had kidnapped Twyla's men and tried to kill her. Ambrose's fire surges. I killed both of your sons, he declares, challenging Ambrose to a fight. Run and hide. Today, everyone learns what the Donovan name is worth. The entire battlefield hears it. Outraged, Ambrose instantly launches himself forward. Mid-air collision, they clash violently right above the ruined road. Ambrose strikes hard. A brutal punch shatters his guard and sends him flying. Wings of blood deploy. He narrowly misses the houses, soaring back upward. Ambrose pursues on raging flames. The young lord draws his legendary Nightblood greatsword and slashes his chest. However, Ambrose's fire instantly seals the deep wound. Caught, Ambrose grabs one wing, slamming him mercilessly into the distant mountain. Stone collapses over his body. He blasts free using a crimson torrent. Ambrose closes the distance instantly, driving a burning hand straight through his chest. The blast deafens him. His limp body plummets down the mountain. Sylvie screams his name from the village. Twyla's ice spells halt completely. Ambrose watches him hit the ground, raising both hands toward the town. He declares their lord dead. Slaughter the village, he orders his army. Inside his coat, a small red doll suddenly shatters. His eyes snap open. The magic item took the fatal strike in his place. Unharmed, he rises from the crater, directly behind the oblivious Ambrose. Ambrose's victory vanishes instantly. The Lord whispers that he killed the merchandise. The system triggers a ticking countdown, an urgent mission to kill Ambrose. Within 5 minutes begins, with severe penalties. Ambrose's coalition immediately charges, but his loyal followers intercept them before they reach the village. Charge, Sylvie leads Night Vale's brave defenders out through the shattered gate. Her petrification halts the front line. His arena followers hit both flanks. Freya's flames incinerate incoming enemy projectiles. Next, Myrla releases a death wail, breaking their charge. Sabine brutally crushes the fighters who survived. The sonic blast, Briar binds flanking enemies as the massive guild army presses on, but get this, he still has one massive trump card. Crushing his blood moon token, the morning sky turns blood red. Miniature blood moon appears, plunging the area into 1 hour of darkness. His night predator skill activates. Sylvie and every succubus in the village receive a powerful blood ray surge. The balance shifts instantly. One enemy fighter who had overpowered 2 village guards is disarmed by Sylvie's first strike. Freya's flames push an entire ranged unit off the ridge. Twyla freezes a central path, pulling wounded villagers behind secure cover. Soon, Briar's tentacles catch a flanking squad, stacking them against a wall like luggage. She warns the invaders that she charges extra for repeat customers. Hilarious. Freya laughs, incinerating another incoming projectile straight out of the sky. Myrla's next wail shatters a caster formation before they finish their spell. The sound collapses a damaged tower. Sabine bravely charges underneath it, catching the falling stone on her shield until all villagers clear out. Under the blood moon, every single follower covers each other's vulnerabilities. First, Sabine blocked Shelby's charging warriors on her shield. Shelby saw the centaur hold the line. She laughed instead of retreating, shouting that his women could fight. Sabine lowered her lance, inviting her to test that conclusion just once. On the other side, Cormac charged straight toward him. Demanding justice for his checkpoint guards, Morla's wail forced him back. But he remained standing. His people were dead, and even as the lie cracked, his grief kept him fighting. Ambrose had to die first, and the 5-minute clock kept ticking down. The blood moon doubled his knight's speed. He reached Ambrose and cut him across the shoulder before he finished turning, but the tyrant answered with a firestorm. He flew through it, using Fiend's grasp to lock one arm, driving his nightblood greatsword straight toward the throat. Ambrose tore free before the blade even landed. He looked at the blood moon and the broken coalition and the village fighters pushing back before removing a metal case from inside his coat. The case was packed with black market serum injectors. A single dose had nearly killed Kirk while forcing him into silver rank. And get this, Ambrose used every dose, emptying them straight into his neck. His dying body changed instantly. Gray hair darkened, wrinkles vanished, his spine straightened. Within seconds, Ambrose wore the 18-year-old body he had before illness and fatherhood. The power kept rising, and he moved before night. Predator could even register him. One punch folded his blood wings and drove him through the mountain. A second strike, breaking the nightblood greatsword from his hand. Ambrose gripped his throat and dragged him across the ridge. Every step split the ground, sending the mountain sliding toward Nightville in giant sheets of rock. The serum was killing him, but it was also making him far stronger than before. The mission clock fell under 1 minute. He fired Crimson Torrent into his face. Ambrose walked through it and broke 2 of his ribs with his knee. Fiend's grasp closed around him, but he ripped the giant hand apart. Freya tried to reach him from the battlefield. Ambrose backhanded her straight through 3 trees, infernal mantle and all without even releasing him. The blood moon was still active, and his full team was still fighting, but Ambrose had overpowered him anyway. He lifted him above the broken ridge. Both my sons died because of you, he snarled. He gripped his wrist and looked at the mission clock. 9 seconds. That sounded like a parenting review. He activated the last Spider Queen reward. Black chains erupted beneath Ambrose. The mournful moon gallows formed around his body and locked every limb inside. Execution frame. He flexed, but the chains held. The gallows ignored raw strength. Once locked onto a single target, one use with no second chance. Ambrose's restored face finally showed pure fear. The execution blade fell and his head struck the stone as the clock held at 9 seconds. The grieving tyrant had brought an army, burned a village, promised away his inheritance, and overdosed back into youth. He still died, calling for sons who were already lost. Urgent mission complete. The gallows vanished. He dropped beside Ambrose's body and forced his wings open again. Then he faced the remaining coalition. His enemy is dead, he told them, demanding they leave Night Vale. Most guild fighters looked at Ambrose's body, the blood moon, and the followers still holding their lines. They quickly left. The hunted monster gave just one order, and the respectable army suddenly remembered. Others left, but Cormac stayed behind. The civic valor leader lowered his weapon but stayed on guard. He refused to leave until he found his guard's killer. Shelby decided to stay too. The Iron Sirens leader rested her weapon across one shoulder, claiming her crew wanted a fight. Garrett's followers made it interesting. It was the same refusal. Dr. Odette backed away slowly while everyone watched Garrett. Then Ambrose's corpse began glowing from the inside. The massive serum dose was still reacting. Cracks of white fire opened across his skin, the chaotic energy beneath them surging way past his final attacks. Final attacks. The dead man was now a bomb large enough to level the village. After losing, of course, another family headache, a massive shadow covered the mountain. Ariella Crosby arrived above the village. On a sky leviathan, this mountain-sized spirit belonged to the Supreme Head of the association's Ridgeway branch. It opened its mouth, swallowed the body whole. The entire explosion detonated inside. Expanded once, then the spirit closed its mouth and looked mildly annoyed. Garrett had spent 5 minutes fighting Ambrose, but Ariella's summon treated his final attack like bad takeout. The power gap was rude and incredibly clear. Ariella landed only after his duel was finished. A later report showed that her team had matched the false aura to Callum's residue. The same report traced crime seen access to Ambrose's private doctor. Her first words went to the 2 leaders who had stayed behind. the checkpoint aura was copied from. Callum's body, Ariella explained. The doctor had full access to the residue and crime scenes. Cormac finally lowered his weapon, his. People were still dead, but the target had changed. Shelby glanced toward the place Dr. Odette had stood, but the doctor had already fled. During the chaos, she was exposed, but her punishment remained unpaid. Dorothea Hargrove stepped down beside Ariella. Dorothea was the head of Scarlet Bastion. She was also Twila's mother. Garrett looked from Dorothea to Twila. He asked how she could forget that detail. Twila wiped blood from her mouth. Her mother read her memories, she argued. This was not the time to discuss filing standards, and Dorothea met Garrett's icy stare, fully accepting the accusation. She had shown Ariella what she learned before they flew to Night Vale. He was Garrett Durham, the supposedly dead porter who still protected Autumn. He had killed those who attacked his followers, then saved civilians those same factions tried to burn. Ariella looked directly at him, warning. They knew where his sister was. Every remaining trace of humor left the scene. He raised his night blood great sword. If anyone touched Autumn, the city would get another crater. She is safe, Ariella answered. Dorothea's people reached her before the coalition connected the name. Twila stepped in, defending her mother crossed a line, but she also kept Scarlet Bastion out of the attack. Mother-daughter wounds stayed open, but the protection still mattered. Behind them, Night Vale village was burning. The old homes were gone, and several villagers were injured. The summoning chamber had split down the center. Garrett looked at Sylvie and admitted he was late. Sylvie took his burned hand, saying he came back. That was all. She said he summoned the Crimson Keep, and red-black light spread over the ruined. The floating fortress rose above the smoke, lowering bridges into the square. It activated a powerful healing field for every registered resident. Broken bones stabilized, and the injured succubi stood up one by one. One elder with severely burned hands left the first healing chamber carrying a child. A guard with a crushed leg walked onto the bridge entirely on his own. Injured villagers stood up one by one, though their destroyed homes were gone. Even so, the Crimson Keep gave Night Vale powerful defensive walls and healing chambers. A single meteor could no longer crush their newly protected home. The villagers crossed the massive bridges, carrying whatever remained of their lives. Sylvie walked out onto the central balcony and looked down at the ruins. She gazed at the massive, towering fortress that had suddenly replaced them. They lost a humble village but gained an incredible castle. Inside, Ariella arrived. She set a Federal of Old Association badge on the table between them. She offered to make young Autumn's protection fully legal, turning his followers into actual residents. They would no longer be targets. Brute force had saved his people so far. But Ariella was offering a way to keep them safe while he was away. Ariella Crosby pushed the heavy Federal of Old Association badge toward him. Honestly, there was no way he could ever turn down this offer. With immediate federal protection guaranteed, he slowly picked up the badge. It was clear Ariella had prepared a much longer speech for this moment. She held a small stack of pages, but quietly lowered them instead. Membership granted his registered followers legal residency and protected travel into human cities. They would get access to work and education, securing Autumn's school and future. These guarantees under his new status were far too important to ignore. Sylvie asked if the coverage included horns, wings, and petrification accidents. Ariella clarified that turning someone to stone on purpose remained a crime. Briar leaned over to Twyla, joking about paperwork for accidental petrification. Twyla warned her not to push it. Finally, his followers could enter human cities. They could walk freely without constantly hiding exactly what they were. Their posture relaxed. His sister's safety had always been his absolute priority. He had spent years taking dangerous suppression jobs just to pay her tuition. This protection was stronger than any wall he could personally stand beside. He accepted immediately, but the association's very next demand was rather awkward. They required 3 biological samples to properly classify a human-born blood fiend. They needed saliva, blood, and 1 highly intimate sample. Talk about awkward. Ariella stared down at the paperwork, while Sylvie grinned widely over her shoulder. Sylvie eagerly offered to assist her lord, making Twyla roll her eyes. Briar poked her head in, teasingly asking if they needed an official witness. Everyone instantly shouted no together. The first 2 samples were finished quickly. But the 3rd sample required a locked room and Sylvie's personal assistance. Ariella waited by the far wall, keeping her eyes glued to the paperwork. Once the case finally clicked shut, he walked back out into the hall. Twyla dryly asked if national security had survived, while Briar offered quality control. Sylvie smugly informed them that the assistant position was permanently filled. Her professional authority was totally intact, well, mostly. The advanced assessment got scheduled for 7 days later in Crown Point City. Officially, this delay gave the association time to prepare a rare species evaluation. Ariella quietly slipped him into the final slot near sundown when his night predator skill was strongest. She told him to score so high they would stop calling him a wild beast. Ariella said it was her first real favor since bringing him on board. But that deadline created a huge issue. His remaining adult orc reserves only covered his daily quests for the 7-day gap, avoiding any nasty sunrise penalties. That kept his training on track. He had beaten Ambrose with one-use items. Smart teamwork and a short 5-minute system quest, but the public evaluation would measure his actual strength. Normal training took way longer than 7 days. Fortunately, Sylvie had another plan. That first night inside Crimson Keep, she gathered about 200 adult succubi in the main hall to reveal a secret technique. They had never tried this before. Normally, succubi drained energy from their partners. But they could actually reverse that flow if every single woman willingly chose to do it. To keep everyone perfectly synchronized, Sylvie split the volunteers into small rotating groups. Before anyone even touched him, that kept the massive power transfer under control. And let the women recover. He looked at Sylvie, completely stunned by this. She pressed a finger to his chest. They knew their people could share power. They joked about a blood fiend doing this inside a restoring fortress. Briar hopped up, calling the whole experiment irresponsible science. Twyla replied from the stairs, saying he liked it for that very reason. The first group reversed their drain together, sending a synchronized wave of demonic energy flooding his body, nearly buckling his knees. Pure strength packed his muscles. His senses sharpened as crimson blood wings snapped open, hitting both surrounding walls. He grabbed a nearby railing to steady himself, instantly bending the metal. The succubi cheered until Sylvie warned them the next push might shatter the ceiling. Then the transfer stopped. Normally, his body would need hours. Just 5 minutes inside Crimson Keep erased the strain, completely healing all damage, and returned his breathing to normal. This permanent strength was their ultimate training loophole. They repeated the technique in controlled waves, rotating the women. Crimson Keep kept restoring him, and each round left massive permanent power behind. But this power cost him control. Early on, he sneezed and blasted every chair against the wall. Briar inspected the wreckage, calling it legendary. Twyla pointed at the chairs, laughing that he lost to furniture. He survived 3 Donovans, yet domestic accidents kept beating him. Humbling, the main hall doors stayed shut all week, and results showed everywhere. By midweek, his resting aura literally bent metal railings. He could hold blood wings open for hours, but every landing still shook the floor. Freya called it progress in an incredibly insulting voice. By day 7, Sylvie had to reinforce the chamber before his heartbeat could crack the windows. Now his fiend's grasp crossed the entire hall. Crimson Torrent stayed balanced in his hands. He landed smoothly without making craters, and retracted his wings cleanly. The Crimson Keep had basically become a massive supernatural gym, a high-speed hospital, and a major scheduling nightmare. Every participant received healing, protection, and a safer base in the village. He walked away with enough power to face the assessment without borrowing another's strength. It was a temporary miracle. A week later, Ariella arrived on a giant skybird. She landed on Crimson Keep's upper platform, stopping as Garrett's aura reached her. Ariella's eyes narrowed, noting that he felt different. He stepped onto the bird behind her, hoping that sounded positive. Ariella tightened her grip on the reins, calling it medically irresponsible. He reminded her she supervised the paperwork. Ariella's face warmed at the sample room memory. She quickly faced forward. They were discussing his power. Garrett gave her his most innocent voice, agreeing completely. The skybird launched toward Crown Point City before Sylvie could make things worse. The massive assessment center occupied an entire federal tower. Public score screens covered the main hall, lined with major faction representatives. Everyone waited behind the barriers, but one young man stood directly beneath the largest screen, looking like the building was built around him. Meet Zane Tucker, an 18-year-old gold upper prodigy waiting for his turn. He was up before Garrett, bringing a custom suit, cameras, and massive confidence. He had enough ego for three, as the first Supreme Observer entered, Zane. Adjusted his collar and stepped up. Tamsin Redwood was a senior association member. Known for testing unusual recruits, she was elegant, calm, and stunning. She was impossible to ignore. Half the hall stopped watching Zane immediately. Zane smiled at her, but Tamsin just walked past him as another Supreme entered. Behind her came Stellan Hollander, a blind swordsman assigned to judge. Whether Garrett threatened humanity, he showed absolutely zero interest in Zane or the cameras or anyone's self-esteem. Zane still totally misunderstood the room, waving his crew closer. They came to watch Garrett's record, then Ariella's Skybird landed. Right on the assessment platform outside the glass wall, drawing every camera away. From Zane, Garrett stepped down beside Ariella. Zane checked the crowd, then Tamsin, and finally stared at the name flashing across the main screen, Garrett Durham. Blood Fiend candidate. His smug smile vanished the instant that screen changed. Respectable effort. Tamsin met him at the entrance, joking that his village defense cost a great deal of paperwork. He looked at her formal combat dress. In his defense, it looked much better when she delivered it, making Tamsin laugh. She leaned closer, telling Garrett to pass first before trying to flirt. He smiled, finally a standard he could actually measure. Ariella looked at him over her shoulder, repeating that he should pass first. He claimed he was just building international relations. Suddenly, Stellan stepped between them. His blind eyes faced Garrett's as his sword pressure silenced the entire room. He warned that if Garrett fed on humans, Stellan would kill him. No smile, no ceremony. Garrett met his gaze, directly replying that innocent people were always safe around him. But anyone attacking his family became his problem. Stellan's hand stayed on his sword, demanding proof. The nearest faction representatives stepped back immediately. Zane stopped smiling, staring down at the polished floor as the heavy warning kept things dead serious. Garrett had legal status for only 1 week. The strongest people in the room still wanted proof his mind was his. Instead of a speech, he gave them a performance. The first test utilized a massive impact pillar. Zane had only cracked its outer layer while his crew replayed the hit 3 times. Then he struck it once, lighting up every single layer. The machine overloaded and shut down while the massive pillar was still shaking. A technician checked the emergency switch, glanced at him in shock, and backed behind safety glass. Up next was the speed course. He flashed through every gate instantly, barely letting the screens update. The replay had to be slowed down just to trace his footsteps. Zane whined that teleportation invalidated the score, but the examiner ignored him. Zane saw every single camera looping the boy's incredible run and shut his mouth. Beside them, the spirit crystal bled from clear to dark crimson, a perfect score. Stellan tilted his head toward the screeching alarm. Tamsin actually stepped closer to watch. Next, the stamina platform cranked up gravity, instantly crushing every other gold candidate. Only he stood tall, enduring the absolute maximum setting. When the pressure finally released, the floor under his boots remained completely crushed. Control and reaction came next in a relentless, brutal gauntlet. He snatched moving targets perfectly without damaging them, and closed up his test wounds before the medic could even log the data. He then projected several blood constructs, forcing the technicians to retreat even further. On every monitoring screen, the exact same word flashed over and over: perfect. They stopped comparing him to Zane, whispering that the testing gear had glitched. Even Zane's own camera crew started dragging their heavy gear over to his lane. They didn't even ask permission. Zane stood completely alone under his score, while Tamsin crossed her arms and offered a rare smile. Even Stellan finally let go of his hilt. Now came the final exam, measuring raw future potential. That's when Eden Prout stepped out from the sealed evaluation room. At 24, she was a licensed assessor, possessing a strange sensory gift that required physical contact with a candidate's fingertip. Yep, the high table had found another deeply awkward ritual. Eden pulled on gloves, explained the strange contact, and waited for consent. He slowly held out his hand, the moment her tongue brushed against his fingertip. Something went horribly wrong. Eden's eyes rolled back to pure white, her body levitated then flew backward, slamming hard into the padded wall. Instantly, every scoreboard flared a violent red. The massive spirit crystal nearby suddenly shattered right down the middle, untouched by anyone. Tamsin lunged forward, catching Eden before she hit the floor. Beside her, Stellan drew his sword. Ariella immediately threw herself between Stellan and the boy. Behind them, the cameras quickly lowered. He hadn't even moved. Eden's unique perception had tried to probe his inner power only to be violently thrown back. She opened her eyes, saw him, and scrambled away. She tried to compose herself, suddenly remembering the entire room was staring in silence. "End the test," Eden gasped. Terrified evaluators quickly reviewed his current score, quickly handing him the highest rank possible without exposing her classified reading. Above Crown Point City, the main screen flared to life. His scores uploaded straight from the testing hall to the outer tower's massive displays. Next, the national feed broadcasted his rating to everyone, legendary upper tier. He received his national title, the Demon Breaker, blood-crowned. Factions that once plotted his containment now begged for private meetings. Security guards who previously stood ready with weapons drawn quickly lowered them, quietly opening the highly restricted exit to let the new monster pass. The porter who once carried bags now stood above experts who refused to value his life. Cameras broadcast the result across the entire country. Ridgeway Central High flashed the big announcement across its hallway screens. The association later sent him the security clip. Autumn stopped right beneath one screen. Holding books tightly against her chest, his face appeared above the title. She dropped her books, covered her mouth, and slowly stepped closer until her hand touched the glass. His sister finally had absolute proof that he was alive. Autumn picked up a book, dropped it again, and started laughing while wiping her face with her uniform sleeve. A teacher walked over, saw his name on the screen, and gently steered the other students back to give her space. He watched that clip endless times in secret, their actual reunion. Still had to wait. Autumn knew he was alive and federal protection now covered both her school and home. For now, he could accept this distance. Eden's sealed report reached him much later. Inside his growth space, she had faced a future fiend god presence. Its pressure expelled her gift before she could reach the center. She reported his potential far exceeded supreme and might even hit peerless, a tier almost nobody alive could ever claim. Director Fulton Dunley, head of the Federal Evolved Association, made sure to keep that insane ceiling off the public record. Legendary upper was already enough to tracked every faction nationwide. A peerless rating would have drawn in foreign powers before he even knew his own limits, so the public received a legendary monster with a national title. Tanzan congratulated him before the flashing cameras. Stellan gave a single cold nod and left without repeating his threat. Zane stood beneath the same giant screen he claimed earlier and watched his name cover his own score. The official result went live before he returned to Crimson Keep. Reporters quickly traced Ariella's flight path, his registration info, and the restored village. Going public was supposed to keep him safe, but did it? Instead, it handed his exact address to every camera, faction, and enemy. By the time he returned to Crimson Keep, reporters already surrounded the landing platform. The National Assessment had published his route straight to Night Vale. Federal protection gave his followers legal status, but also gave every camera crew the country their address, treating the massive floating fortress like a public attraction. One reporter leaned right over the outer rail to film the healing courtyards, while another tried to tail a village family through a private door. 3 more shouted questions about his loyal followers, his bloodline, his title, and whether he planned to enter professional gaming. Another reporter even asked if Sylvie was his assistant, his wife, or a massive public relations headache. Sylvie lined close to the microphone, saying first follower. He added favorite problem. Her smile turned warm for him and lethal for the reporter. He figured that part was obvious. Briar leaned right over the upper balcony and offered to answer every question for a fee. Twyla quickly dragged her back before she launched a literal subscription service. He called out, "You do not know half the answers." Briar grinned, "Neither do they. That is why mine are premium." He still explained why a vampire assessment turned into an esports interview. The succubi guarding the platform tried their traditional punishment of violet whips, snapped across expensive coats. The magic caused pleasure instead of any real injury. So the reporters stopped running back and started fighting for better camera angles. One guy raised both hands, yelling to do that again for the live stream. The guards looked personally betrayed by their own species' bizarre behavior. Sylvie met him at the landing stairs with rigid wings, addressing him as her lord. She noted the humans enjoyed discipline wrong as a reporter shoved a microphone toward her, asking Sylvie Morn how many women currently shared the castle with Garrett Durham. Sylvie just smiled, saying there were more than they could ever interview before he destroyed that camera. The reporter turned toward him, demanding to know if that was a threat. He raised one hand, summoning Fiend's grasp above the platform as a giant blood red hand. It slammed shut around every camera, drone, microphone, and recording case at once. Plastic cracked, lenses shattered, and memory cards rained down into one neat pile. Nobody got hurt, but every livestream died instantly. That was actually the first coordinated thing the press had managed all morning. He walked over to the shattered gear, telling them that Crimson Keep was a home in Night Vale's residents were not public entertainment. Step past the platform again and you leave without any of the equipment you brought. The reporters finally backed toward their aircraft, though one crew tried to keep recording from inside their vehicle. Fiend's grasp tapped their windshield once, making the phone disappear below the dashboard as the driver suddenly remembered an urgent appointment. Somewhere else, one woman stared at the ruined cameras, asking who would pay. He pointed toward the sky, blaming the person who ignored the boundary. Ariella Crosby landed beside him on her Skybird after the last crew retreated, the Supreme Association branch leader watched the departing aircraft and then the pile of crushed gear. Ariella pointed out he erased the footage, but also gave them a massive headline. They crossed into private rooms, he replied simply. Ariella rubbed her forehead, telling him he can't crush every camera crew that annoys him. He just nodded at the wreckage, saying he only crushes the ones inside his home. Ariella's gaze shifted from the camera pile to him, noting he makes bad decisions look annoyingly confident. Careful, he replied. That almost sounded like a compliment. Ariella's mouth twitched. Suddenly one heavy hoof cracked the stone behind them. Sabine Whitfield waited at the far end of the platform. His loyal Centaur follower had held the line against the Spider Queen. She protected Night Vale during the war, watching Freya and Briar receive every single reward she wanted. Her Centaur body had completely reshaped into four powerful human-like legs supporting her torso in a wide, stable frame built to carry a rider. Sabine lifted her chin, declaring she created a riding form. He stared at her four legs. The system's cursed equipment department had apparently expanded into relationship counseling. Sabine caught his expression, noting that he complains every single time the system gives him an unusual solution. He answered that he also uses every unusual solution anyway. Sabine replied that was exactly why she prepared this one. Her restraint broke on the last word. Sabine had literally reshaped her body for him. After he rewarded newer followers, suddenly, a system notice flashed open right between them. System quest activated. Resolve Sabine Whitfield's neglected bond and complete her affinity. Sabine had already delivered her ultimate insult. She stepped closer, recalling how he blocked the Queen's deadliest strike at Nightville. Smashed shield, falling stones, yet he rewarded Freya and Briar instead. Left empty-handed, he softly admitted she had every right to be angry. Sabine's ears twitched back. She expected a defensive excuse but received absolutely none. He owned his mistake, admitting he took her strength for granted. Sabine studied his expression, then shifted into a new stance, ordering him to ride along. A true warrior's apology demands proof, so he quickly mounted up. Sabine launched them across Crimson Keep, clearing the upper bridge in a massive leap. She ran the outer wall while stunned reporters watched from a distance. Naturally, the wildest details remained hidden. Sabine finally halted on the private terrace. Looking back, she asked if the form satisfied him. He confirmed it solved the balance. Sabine's eyes narrowed instantly. That was not what she was asking. Her rising affinity spoke before he could speak, forcing him to step down to face her. Facing her, he called her powerful, beautiful, and impossible to overlook. Sabine's stoic composure shattered. Closing the terrace doors herself, Sabine waited until the system updated. Sabine Whitfield, follower affinity at 100%. Blood Fiend essence transferred, boosting her straight to Tier 6 middle. Her explosive aura bent the terrace railings before Soulforge finally triggered. Weightless black and red plates formed around his chest, locking seamlessly together. They reflected the terrace light back at Sabine, exclusive gear acquired. Sabine's mirror armor reflects a portion of all incoming damage. Right after, a second reward materialized, right above Sabine's open palm. It was a massive green crystal pulsing with raw nature energy. Thick vines sprouted through the stone tiles, turning every leaf toward her. Unique follower reward unlocked, the Verdant Heart, doubling compatible nature abilities. Touching his mirror armor, she smiled, noting her reward now protected him too. He gently caught her wrist, reminding her she had protected him long before. Her affinity stayed locked at 100 as Sylvie suddenly opened the door. Sylvie's eyes darted between the bent railing, his new armor, and Sabine. Yet Sabine stood proud, her rank, armor, and clear position finally established. The next choice was incredibly easy. Twyla alone could use the crystal. That afternoon, he brought the verdant heart to a quiet mountain field. There, Twyla Hargrove waited patiently in her signature ice combat uniform. She possessed the strongest compatible nature ability among his entire group. Staring at the massive green crystal, she dryly asked if that went inside her. He explained it would fuse with her core, making her eyes narrow suspiciously. When she asked where the core was, he pointed directly at her abdomen, telling her to stop glaring at him like he was the one who designed it. Twyla covered the spot, grumbling about his system's terrible bedside manners. He raised the crystal, joking that customer service wasn't his department. Pressing the verdant heart against her core, glowing green light sank in. Twyla's back arched, frost exploded outwards, and the crystal vanished completely. For a brief silent moment, nothing moved. Then, absolute winter erupted. Freezing cold expanded in all directions, turning the nearest ridge completely white. The cold crossed the valley and climbed the distant slopes, moving until 10. Miles of mountain terrain fell inside Twyla's ice domain, where every flake answered. To her, every frozen surface carried her awareness. When Twyla raised her hand, a wall of ice rose miles away and split a cloud of dust before it reached them. She looked at the white horizon and smiled, pointing at the frozen valley to propose a field test. He spread his blood wings, declaring a field battle as Twyla's smile changed. Battle, she mocked his opening line. He quickly clarified he meant sparring, but Twyla smiled, calling him a coward. She struck before he could defend his vocabulary. Ice spears erupted from 3 ridges at once. He soared above the first wave, cutting through the second with his night blood greatsword, then used blood step past the third. Twyla already knew exactly where he would land. Her senses owned this entire domain. Ice locked around his wing. She yanked him down, stepped inside his guard, and clamped her legs around his shoulders before slamming him hard into the snow. Twyla pinned him down, completely satisfied. Twyla tightened the lock. She asked if her performance satisfied him. Looking up, he only said the domain works. Twyla's smile grew, teasing that was not her question, apparently his. Followers had coordinated their cheeky dialogue. He shattered the ice around his wing, rolled them over, and grabbed her waist before she could rebuild her hold. He told her he was impressed, approving her reward. Then Twyla's domain closed around them, burying everything beneath fresh snow. When they returned to Crimson Keep, the system issued a warning instead of another celebration. It warned that follower affinity must be maintained. If a follower falls below maximum, unique rewards and soul-forged equipment will deactivate. He read the harsh warning aloud. Twyla stared at the frost curling around her glove, realizing his rewards could shut off if he started neglecting them. He admitted it, earning a flat look. She smiled, glad the system finally added consequences. Meanwhile, the count beside Twyla remained at 100, just like Sabine's. Twyla grabbed her coat and handed him a sealed invitation from Scarlet Bastion, explaining her mother wanted him to join them. The faction could offer him territory, valuable personnel, and a recognized command structure. Dorothea Hargrove's offer was practical, but Twyla's expression showed she wanted to keep him close for private reasons. He handed the invitation back unopened, having spent too long as an expendable asset. He refused to become some faction's prized monster. Twyla did not argue, suggesting he build his own instead. That was his plan. She gave him the hard truth immediately, while Scarlet Bastion could register him instantly. His own new organization required a proven combat record. The rule was simple, requiring him to defeat one verified Tier 7 beast. Twyla opened the commission board, showing an upper Tier 7 request unclaimed for months. The target hid inside the Blackwater Expanse, a deadly, monster-filled swamp big enough to hide an army. He accepted, and Ariella arrived before departure with a grave warning from Director Fulton Dunley. Imogen Radley was spotted inside the swamp, a highly dangerous fugitive Supreme Tier, which with unknown motives. Twyla crossed her arms, noting that the quest only listed a Tier 7 beast. Ariella looked at him, warning Imogen was far beyond that level. He secured Sabine's mirror armor and prepared. He had plans for the witch too. Ariella stepped closer, suggesting he postpone this. He countered that he could always join Scarlet Bastion and let another faction decide his future. Twyla moved beside him, claiming she had offered politely for the record. Ariella asked Twyla if she was going with him, and Twyla quickly took his arm. She called it their first official post-assessment trip, basically making it a date. He opened Bloodwings, a dangerous Tier 7 work order. Talk about a killer first date. She joked his dates needed better branding. Before sunset, he carried her over the mountains. They flew into the Blackwater expanse. She squeezed him tighter whenever the heavy wind shifted. She stubbornly denied enjoying the flight every single time he looked back at her. But her affinity was brutally honest. Blackwater spread beneath them as dark lakes. It was filled with drowned trees and moving reeds. Human detectors completely failed inside this mist. So they landed on a central stone ridge, where he summoned his elite followers. Briar, Myrla, Freya, and Sabine emerged through Victor's bond, forming a half-circle. They gathered close while Twyla froze a solid, safe path through the deep mud. The Tier 7 target is in this marsh, he commanded. Split up and kill hostile males. They had to preserve the adult females and report any Tier 7 traces immediately. Briar smiled. When she joked about shopping, he firmly reminded her that he wanted survivors, not merchandise. Briar's eyes brightened, teasing that he always ruined her sales pitches. Meanwhile, Freya lit her hand. She was ready to burn any obstacles. Sabine lowered her lance, eager to find something worthy. Myrla gently touched the wraith pendant around his neck before turning to make her move. She playfully warned him not to make the marsh jealous while she was gone. The 4 bonds spread in 4 directions. He had turned one simple search into 4 dangerous lanes because speed mattered more than comfort. The first signal would come from Myrla. Inside the dark Blackwater expanse, the 6 of them split up at the stone ridge. Twyla stayed right by his side, while the others set off in different directions. The follower bonds tracked each woman's precise direction and physical condition. He only learned the details of their battles from later reports. Twyla froze their path as the dark water swallowed the ice behind them. Splitting up saved precious time, but a single follower could easily be surrounded out there. This place also made distance highly deceptive. A bond could feel reassuringly close. Even when thick fog, deep water, and moving mud separated them, he made the call. Any bad signal would be on him. Meanwhile, Briar reached the western reed forest first. Her bond remained perfectly calm until aggressive crow women suddenly dropped from the forest canopy. Hooked spears and massive black wings blocked her path, as Briar would later explain. The first attacker ordered her to leave their nesting grounds immediately. She saw them, remembered his daily quest, and switched from lethal poison to non-lethal capture tactics. As they dove, Briar filled the air with writhing tentacles. One hooked spear stopped mere inches from her face before a tentacle wrapped the shaft. It ripped the attacker from the sky, placing her gently into a tightening coil. 3 more attackers dove from different sides. Briar quickly snatched 2 of them. She grabbed their ankles and trapped the third within a wall of regenerating limbs. The flock changed tactics, using razor-sharp feather blades to slice through her restraints. As 2 women circled behind her, Briar let the severed limbs fall and regenerated new ones. She snared the flankers mid-strike, their own momentum carrying them straight into her coils. The flock tried to climb away, so Briar spread a heavy venom mist. Through the treetops, the venom numbed their wings without stopping there. Hearts they plummeted straight into waiting restraints one after another. By the time the reeds settled, every single adult crow woman was breathing, furious and tied. Uptight beneath the trees, Briar later presented her catch with both hands. Raised like she had just finished a delivery, announcing she brought inventory, she told him those are captives. He muttered, stop making his daily quest sound like warehouse management. Briar smiled, saying he only complained because she was efficient. If he kept them alive, she would praise him later. He laughed. Briar looked far too pleased with herself. The shameless mimic understood his logistics too well. Her lane produced no Tier 7 trace, giving them a new group of living adult targets. The next sunrise became easier, though the Tier 7 target remained completely missing. Then follower kill experience started pouring in from the north. Freya's bond flared hot enough to sting across his chest, the flame which had crossed a patch of dry ground when rat men burst from below, catching her legs with chains and dragging her into an underground tunnel network. The ambush landed. Freya vanished beneath the marsh before she could even open her wings. The rat men pulled her through packed earth toward a massive nest spreading Under miles of reeds, their chains pinning her arms and legs low. At each junction, more rat men threw wet hides over her flames, dragging her further. From open air, the ambush worked. They crowded closer. Freya would tell him later that one of them called her a captured lamp, a terrible word choice around the woman he had once assigned to cave lighting. Freya stopped fighting the chains as the rat men crowded closer. Then she drove both hands into the tunnel floor, her upgraded flames compressed into a blinding white-hot heat. Stone melted, underground water flashed into steam. Lava erupted through the connected passages running beneath the marsh for 10 miles. Every rat man in the tunnel network received the same lethal lesson at once. His system notifications became a solid stream of shared experience. Freya erupted from the ground inside a pillar of fire. The tunnel entrances collapsed behind her, while a ring of marsh water boiled away from the sheer impact. When she reported back, soot covered one cheek, and satisfaction covered everything else, teasingly asking if she was still just a lamp. He looked at the 10-mile line of smoking ground. You upgraded to regional heating. Freya wiped soot from her cheek, smiling. That sounded almost affectionate, so don't overheat. She grinned, which counted as her apology. For one report, her lane also produced no Tier 7 target, the third feedback. Pulse came from Sabine. She had taken the eastern mud flats where pale larvae the size of carts pushed through the wet soil around her hooves. Sabine crushed the first creature beneath her heavy lance. Two more immediately erupted behind her. Mirror. Bright energy surged through her new Tier 6 aura as she trampled one and split the other clean down the center. The larvae kept coming, so Sabine lowered her shield, charged across the muddy flats, destroying every creature that surfaced. Shared experience reached him in short bursts. Then the mud stopped moving as Sabine planted her lance, calling the entire area a disappointment. The ground instantly answered. A massive Tier 6 upper adult worm rose beneath her, its body pushing through the flats like a moving wall, each scarred segment opening up a massive mouth. With several rings of stone-cutting teeth, the beast followed the dead larvae to their killer. Sabine stared at something massive enough to swallow her. New writing form whole. Finally, she told it a proper opponent, the worm. Struck first, Sabine planted her shield, catching the massive descending head. Mud erupted around all four legs. The impact shoved her backward across the flats. But her new Tier 6 body stayed upright. She lowered the shield, aiming her lance at the creature's open mouth, charging before the mud settled. The clash spiked through their bond, then the signal steadied during her charge. No result followed. The adult worm remained her target. Then Myrla's bond shifted. She had claimed the southern basin. At first, her bond remained steady. The basin had no visible beast, only waist-high flowers and pale pink pollen. Drifting over the water, Myrla was his Tier 5 middle banshee follower. She could break armies with one scream and had survived the Spider Queen and the Night Veil War. This pollen entered her lungs before she could find anything to attack. Intense heat spread through her, her pulse racing and hands trembling. Shaking uncontrollably, Myrla admitted to him later that she first blamed her old sensitivity from the arena. Then vines erupted from beneath the flowers. One grabbed her wrist, another coiled around her waist, a third swept her feet. Right out from under her, dragging her down, Myrla let out a death wail. The flowers bent, yet those vines held. She channeled her scream into a focused pulse, shattering several stems nearby, but new vines quickly rose from beneath the swamp water, replacing them instantly. The real enemy remained completely hidden inside the basin, while the field itself kept up the assault. More pink pollen burst around her face, directly targeting both her desire and self-control. Together, talk about a nightmare. It creates a fatal compulsion, stripping all patience to resist. Myrla fought the vines, but every single movement spread more pollen across her bare skin. Her bond flashed once, then it screamed. He froze on a narrow marsh path beside Twyla. Twyla saw his face and conjured a massive ice bridge toward the basin. Go, she commanded. He looked into the fog. The mist blocks your range, he warned. I can protect myself, Twyla replied, pushing the ice bridge farther through the reeds. She called you because she cannot. Leaving Twyla alone created another massive risk. Stain guaranteed. Myrla would lose the battle inside her body. He unfurled blood-red wings and soared south. The thick mist blocked any straight route. He climbed above the drowned trees, finding Myrla's exact coordinates through their bond, diving back down whenever the fog broke. Twice, colossal shapes stirred under the water, tracking his shadow, but he ignored Both monsters, Myrla had triggered the death signal, anything else had to wait. The follower bond pulled tighter with every passing second. Behind him, Twyla stood beside a black lake, the magical verdant heart pulsing active deep beneath her core. What unfolded after he left was reconstructed from her official report. The marsh fell silent. All around her, a single branch snapped across the lake. Twyla instantly froze the reeds and whipped toward the sound. She had faced 2 legendary Donovans and a massive army. Without flinching, yet an empty swamp still reminded her of childhood ghost stories. Sound moved under the water. Please be a monster, Twyla muttered quietly. The lake exploded. A terrifying Tier 6 Naga emerged, boasting a massive, scaled human-like torso. Hovering above a long, scaled serpent body, it brandished a curved blade and stared directly at the green light pulsing from Twyla's uniform, demanding that she hand over the verdant heart. Twyla exhaled once, glad to face a mere monster, which clearly offended the beast. In its rage, it sent the entire lake crashing toward her as a massive wave. Twyla simply activated her 10-mile domain, freezing the water midair. Ice rapidly spread. From that frozen wall across the lake, the surface locked instantly, and then the brutal cold drove deep, turning every plant, current, and channel into solid ice. The Naga tried to dive, but its tail was already trapped. Twyla stepped onto the crystal surface and raised her hand, forming thousands of jagged ice shards beneath. The ice, every single shard pointed directly at the trapped creature, the Naga. Frantically slashed the first wave, but Twyla closed her fist, the frozen lake tightly compressed, shattering the creature's defense and completely sealing its massive body. Within a massive, solid pillar, before the final crack could slice its throat, the dying beast begged Imogen Radley for forgiveness, but Twyla mercilessly shattered the pillar. The Naga perished inside the very waters it had wielded. Then, its frozen corpse began to shift, scales shrank, and the humanoid torso folded inward. This Tier 6 beast reverted back into a simple, green water snake, frozen solid on the ice. Twyla's official mission report documented every single detail of this strange transformation. Director Fulton had warned her about Imogen Radley. The monster's final words, combined with its beastly form, suggested the runaway witch had temporarily mutated a local creature. Since the beast targeted the verdant heart, Twyla's newly acquired reward was already serving as dangerous bait. It granted her absolute control over the lake, but put a glowing target on her back. The system always extracts its price. Imogen's true purpose remained a mystery. Meanwhile, he had finally arrived at Myrla's basin. Pink pollen choked the southern marsh like thick smoke. From above, the basin looked peaceful as pale flowers drifted across clear patches of water. Not a single monster was in sight, which only made the silence far more terrifying. A Tier 7 entity had constructed this trap, yet the only target in sight was the helpless woman caught inside. Myrla was suspended high above the dark water inside a cage of thick vines, her banshee aura flaring in ragged, unstable bursts. Every single pulse was weaker than the last. Suddenly, his wraith pendant grew icy against his chest as he crossed into the territory. Its innate spirit resistance blocked the compulsion from his mind, while his poison resistance slowed the spreading heat. Coursing through his veins, it only bought him time as he flew through the pollen. A vine lashed at his throat, but his nightblood greatsword sliced it apart. 2 more bound his wing, but he activated Fiend's grasp to rip them from their roots. Dropping heavily beside Myrla, her glazed eyes managed to find him through the haze. Myrla weakly warned him not to breathe, but his response came too late. He quickly cut the thick bindings around her wrists, waist, and legs until she collapsed helpless into his arms. She was finally free from the parasitic vines, but her skin was burning, and her pulse rapidly accelerated. The deadly toxin had already spread throughout her entire system. Suddenly, the system interface flashed a warning detecting Tier 7 siren bloom pollen. The victim's condition was already fatal. Due to compulsion poison, time limit 1 hour. The survival condition required paired detoxification. He carried Myrla toward a clean patch of safe ground away from the creeping vines. The pale flowers eerily tracked them as they moved, yet none opened or attacked. Again, at the time, rescuing her was far more important than asking why. She gripped his coat hard enough to tear the fabric. Garrett, Morla gasped out, forcing each word through the agonizing poison. Cutting her free did not remove it. The hidden Tier 7 beast had already moved the fight deep inside her body, and Morla had 1 hour to complete the poison's condition or die. Morla had only 1 hour before the siren Bloom's poison killed her. Garrett carried her beyond the thickest vines, but Pink Holland still clung to her clothes and hair. Her trembling body shook helplessly against his wile. The system repeated the same survival condition, paired detoxification required. The rule gave them only one path and no comfortable way to discuss it. Morla forced her eyes open and told him to put her down. He lowered her onto a patch of dry ground between two drowned trees. She kept one hand locked around his sleeve. The poison is indeed controlling my body, Morla said, but it is not choosing. For me, her breathing broke between the words. Garrett knelt where she could see him. Clearly, then tell me your choice, he said. Morla pulled him close. I choose to live, she said, and I choose you. Then she suddenly kissed him. The burning poison crossed through the contact. Heat hit his blood hard enough to stop his breath. The wraith pendant flashed cold against his chest, cracked the first wave, and failed against the concentrated dose. His poison resistance slowed the spread for one heartbeat. The wraith pendant flashed again while his poison resistance pushed back. Together, they bought a few seconds. The concentrated dose kept spreading because the Tier 7 condition had already taken hold. Morla caught both his wrists. Resistance can buy time but cannot rewrite the condition. She had survived enough arena magic to recognize the difference. Then the effect reached everything. Concentrated siren bloom poison transferred. Garrett Durham and Morla Crawford are both in fatal condition. Complete paired detoxification immediately. Failure results in death. Morla had pulled him into the same death clock. The system now listed Garrett Durham and Morla Crawford under one fatal condition with one shared route out. Abandoning her was impossible even if he had wanted to. He looked past her at the silent flower basin. No creature moved between the vines. No second attack came. The poison had already forced the decision. A vine shifted beneath the water and settled again. Morla's fingers tightened round his collar. Nothing approached. The entire basin remained too quiet for a place that had just poisoned two people. He carried Morla behind a wall of roots where the open basin could not see them clearly. Before anything else, he made her look at him again. The poison set the deadline, he said. You still control the answer. Do you want me to continue? Yes. Morla tightened both hands in his coat. Stay. So he stayed. Behind the roots, the system tracked the only result he needed. The poison pressure climbed until his vision darkened. Morla's banshee aura flickered against his chest. His resistance had bought them seconds while the poison kept climbing. At the worst point, the follower bond blurred. Twyla, Freya, Briar, and Sabine became distant pulses he could barely separate. Morla's pulse remained beside his. Fast and stubborn, he held on to that one signal. She did too. Then the heat began to fall, poison saturation decreasing, paired detoxification complete, fatal condition removed. Survival was the reward. His muscles still shook, and Morla's aura had faded to a weak pulse. During that painful detox, they were entirely helpless. Afterward, neither of them could stand. He stayed awake just long enough to confirm Morla was breathing normally. Then both collapsed beneath the giant roots. By the time he opened his eyes, the light above Blackwater had changed. The sun sank low behind the thick mist, sending thin gold light cutting through the drowned trees. His mirror armor remained locked round his chest. The wraith pendant had grown warm after that concentrated toxic dose overwhelmed its magical resistance. Nightblood lay within reach, right where he dropped it. Morla rested beside him, one weak hand still gripping his heavy coat. The violent heat had finally left her skin, her pulse slowing to a steady rhythm. She opened her eyes moments later. Surprisingly, the Doom Prophet had absolutely nothing dramatic to say. He told her she was alive. Morla gently touched his face, checking if the system had lied, giving a weak smile while whispering that he was too. Real relief finally replaced the panic in her voice as he helped her sit up. A loose vine brushed her shoulder, making her flinch and grab onto him once more. Her old sensitivity had completely survived the poison. He teased her about the undefeated cucumber consequences, earning a weak glare. She warned him never to mention that vegetable again, or she would test if his mirror armor reflected emotional damage. She was definitely recovering. As she tried to stand, her weak knees folded, and he caught her before she hit the roots. Morla gripped his shoulder, telling him not to look pleased, claiming she only checked if his dramatic timing survived. She joked that since it survived him, it must be immortal. Her voice was still weak, but that sharp bite was back. He checked his follower bonds, seeing Twyla, Briar, and Freya active in their own lanes. Sabine's bond still carried the heavy pressure of her ongoing worm battle. Morla was safe enough to move, but they had allies waiting and another battle raging. Leaving the quiet flower basin now would have been the sensible, safe move. But reasonable moves always had a terrible survival rate around him, and one thing kept bothering him: that hidden Tier 7 beast had possessed every single advantage. Its pollen tracked Morla, and a concentrated dose had poisoned him. They spent their weakest moments trapped behind a fragile wall of roots, yet no attack came. The vines stayed loose and nothing moved behind the trees while he could barely stand. Oddly, the pale flowers had actually turned toward their hiding spot. Whoever controlled them must have waited for the poison to finish them. He looked back toward the basin. Those pale blossoms still faced their position. Morla followed his intense gaze, asking if he believed it stayed close. He suspected something watched them, missing the easiest kill of its life. Morla pushed herself upright against the tree. She noted that didn't sound like relief, but a dangerous clue. Walking away meant leaving a Tier 7 threat right next to his 4 isolated allies. Besides, the commission required a verified Tier 7 victory, and he refused to let this beast choose the next victim. He drew the Nightblood greatsword, heading back to the dark basin. Morla tried to follow, but her first step almost dropped her again. He told her to stay where the pollen was thin and scream if the vines moved. Racing against the tree, Morla teased that he made recovery sound incredibly romantic. Myrla admitted she chose the vampire with a vegetable weapon. Her standards, she said, were compromised by poison. Fair enough. She stayed near dry ground where the pollen was thin. Her death wail remained ready if anything moved behind him. The field held hundreds of pale pink flowers with wide, dark-centered petals. Every cluster carried a bit of the sweet scent that clung to Myrla. The vines that had bound her curved toward the basin center. He followed their path instead of checking every single flower at random. The scent grew stronger with every step. He pressed the flat of Nightblood greatsword against an ordinary cluster. Every stem bent under pressure, then floated back upright, completely ignoring him. The next cluster released a thin cloud of pollen. The wraith pendant cooled against his chest, but the weak dose lacked the crushing pressure of the original trap. Those blossoms carry poison and stay passive. He kept moving toward the stronger scent, pushing even deeper. Most flowers bent, shed petals, or drifted in the water. None avoided the sword. Then one flower leaned away before his boot even touched the water. He stopped, its petals held perfectly still. He tapped one with the sword flat. The flower twitched. He tapped the blossom right beside it, but nothing happened. He touched the suspicious one again, much lighter this time. Its stem pulled half an inch deeper into mud. Myrla saw the retreat from behind him. That one moved, Myrla pointed out. He kept his sword still. Plants move. But that one looked guilty. Fair distinction. He crouched beside the flower. Its stem was thicker than the others, holding a strong, sweet scent. When he pressed one of the delicate petals between his gloved fingers, heat moved through the fabric, then faded against his protective wraith pendant. The flower trembled as he lifted its outer leaves with his sword. The stem pulled away from the blade, trying to blend with ordinary blossoms. Myrla stayed behind him, keeping a tight grip on his dark coat. The field had almost killed them once, yet this flower tried to play dumb. He still needed proof this was the Tier 7 siren bloom, not another poison decoy. Blood assimilation had always identified living targets through direct contact, and one simple taste would tell him if the poison lived inside it. His most reliable test is also, honestly, kind of hilarious. He looked at the flower and Myrla stared at him, shaking her head. No, he reminded her, he had sampled far worse. Myrla stared, reminding him he bit briar. During a death match, he showed her his fangs, boasting that it worked. Myrla pressed both hands over her face, sighing that cursed gear had ruined his judgment. He joked it was a separate department, leaning closer to smell the center of the flower. The sweet scent matched her poison perfectly. The petals folded inward before he touched them again. He exposed his fangs, and the flower jerked back so hard mud sprayed across his boots. A frightened voice cried from inside the closed petals, begging him, "Please do not taste me."